One day in the peaceful city of Aldea, the sunlight shines brightly across the landscape. Suddenly, a red-haired girl runs in excitedly, shouting that she has finally found her target. Grabbing our protagonist's arm, she immediately calls him to get out of there quickly. Then another redhead appears right behind him, telling the boy to hurry up once and for all. With little choice, our boy simply lets out a tired sigh from all the commotion. Jumping to another day, the bizarre scene repeats itself in the same noisy tavern. This time a girl in a dark cloak appears out of nowhere saying that she finally found the guy. Right next to him, a platinum blonde with a noble-looking face begs him to visit their property. Defeated, the little protagonist can no longer endure so much persecution and lets out a heavy sigh. In the blink of an eye, another day arrives, and now it's a blonde girl asking to play with this Ramai. Being direct and to the point, he cuts the girl's excitement short by letting her know he's busy today. But who said she'd take no for an answer without grabbing his clothes and dragging the poor guy outside? Making that puppy dog face, the blonde insists it'll only be a little bit. Completely lost, the kid mentally wonders how on earth he ended up in this absurd situation. Cut the scene abruptly to a dark and sinister forest in the middle of the night. Suddenly, a loud yell breaks the silence as a brute calls the newcomer's attention. With a slightly trembling voice, our boy responds, confirming that he is the public executioner named Kai. To the point, the gang leader announces that everyone is going to sleep and that the kid should stay on watch. And to make matters worse, the big guy even orders him to deal with the hostages if they start screaming. Abandoned in the darkness, the protagonist can only watch the guys walk away towards the camp. Completely confused, he tries to process what the heck is going on in this bizarre place. Scratching his head, his confusion only increases as he tries to understand how he ended up there in the bushes. In the depths of desperation, the last thing that comes to mind is having pulled someone out during a nasty truck accident. Without making any sense, he realizes that he blinked and woke up in this godforsaken place. Gazing at the starry sky, a nagging feeling creeps in as he realizes that this place isn't entirely unfamiliar. Suddenly, the shock hits hard when you realize you're inside the world of the game Fancy Roomy Fantasy. Focusing on the present, he casts a tense glance at the stalls, realizing that he has clearly become a villain's henchman. Revolted by his own fate, our protagonist wonders why destiny had to be so cruel. At that moment, a metallic creaking sound coming from a nearby cart sent shivers down the boy's spine. Out of the corner of his eye, his vision widens as he comes face to face with a real iron gate. Peeking through the bars, it finally dawns on her when she sees the girls trapped in the dark. Breaking a cold sweat, the game's memory warns that all the villains in this part end up completely exterminated by the heroines. Without a second thought, the main plan becomes to run away as fast as possible to avoid becoming mincemeat. Rummaging through an old trunk, he finds a map, muttering that stealing from bandits shouldn't bring divine punishment. Opening the worn parchment, confidence surges as he confirms that he truly understands the geography of that world. But before he could leave, a pang of conscience made him look back at the cage of the hostages. Swallowing hard, our makeshift hero slowly approaches the bars with the lantern in his hand. Calling softly, he throws the bomb and invites the prisoners to escape with him. Huddled together in fear and cold, the four girls look up, somewhat frightened by the proposal. Disbelieving, the redhead repeats the word escape, as if it were the worst joke ever. Immediately frowning, she tells the boy to stop fooling around, thinking it's just a sadistic trick. Taking the lid, the platinum blonde coldly demands at least one good reason to trust any henchman. Caught off guard, our boy falls completely silent for a brief second, without any ready excuses. Noticing his hesitation, the redhead gives a mocking little smile, saying that his little act has failed miserably. Ignoring the scolding, he simply uses the key to unlock the door and sincerely apologizes for the delay. Playing fair, the protagonist confesses that he lied from the beginning, just to prioritize their escape as quickly as possible. Flushing the gate wide open, he calls everyone outside, warning that if they're caught, everyone's going to be in trouble. Trembling with pain, the redhead warns in a weak voice that her leg is too injured to take a step. Completely blind, the platinum blonde also throws a bucket of cold water on things by saying she can't see an inch in front of her. And to make matters worse, blonde Ramai is lying on the floor, burning with fever and unconscious. Throwing in the towel for good, they murmur that even if they flee, they will end up dying in the middle of the dark woods. With a sad smile, the little blind girl is grateful, just knowing that he is not a real enemy. Hearing those harsh words, the boy's face hardens, feeling the absurd weight of the responsibility. At that moment, the sickly blonde stretches her trembling hand upwards, groaning in sheer weakness. With tears in her eyes, little Ramai pleads for help in the midst of that terrifying darkness. Feeling his instincts pull him along, our hero makes a decision that will change the whole story. Clenching his fist angrily, he lets out a loud and firm no to that defeatist attitude. Beating his chest, the boy vows that running away is better than staying, and if they can't walk, he'll carry everyone. Completely shocked, the girls stare at the guy, thinking he's lost his last screw in his brain. Raising his head with a swagger, he shows the map, announcing that he knows the area and that everything will be all right. Calling them to action, he orders the two who are still conscious to cling to him with all their might. Looking like a human coat hanger, the little protagonist walks off confidently holding all three girls at once. Sweating only a few drops, he realizes with amazement that this new body has muscles that seem endless. Shaking his head quickly, he pushes away the distraction and tells his brain to focus 100 on survival. Looking back out of the corner of my eye, a huge wave of relief washes over me when I see that the bandits are still snoring loudly. Using the memory of a gaming addict, he replays the tortuous paths of the map in his own mind. Suddenly, the game's blue interface flashes above your head, confirming the city's name as Aldia. Connecting the dots, the crazy theory is confirmed when you realize that the original data from your save came along. With a confident smile on his face, our boy advances through the forest, already knowing his exact destination. Cut straight to the destination, revealing a sinister, glowing treehouse isolated in the middle of nowhere. Completely lost in the dark, the blind platinum blonde whispers, "What kind of strange place is this?" Carefully placing the girls on the ground, the boy calmly explains that it's a hiding place he made himself. In front of an invisible door, a giant virtual panel full of codes pops up out of nowhere, floating in the air. Asking for a second of patience, he tells the girls to be quiet and wait there. Drawing on his old gamer memories, he activates a magic circle in his hand to enter the secret access password. Upon activating the spell, a bright blue portal appears in the center of the tree. Emerging from the dusty interior, the little protagonist remarks that at least the hiding place still exists. Very carefully, she throws little Ramai onto the bed to try and rest her body. Somewhat suspicious, the redhead questions whether the guy is really just a regular, low-level henchman. Soon the platinum blonde agrees, finding it super bizarre that someone would build a secret base like that in the middle of nowhere. Shrugging, the boy confesses that he's just as surprised as the prisoners themselves. Then the tension returns heavily when the redhead glances at the completely faded blonde. Remembering his own inventory, our boy calculates if there are any useful items stored in the chest. Desperate, the little redhead begs for any crumb of food to save her friend. With a rough jolt, the boy opens the wooden box, desperately searching for supplies. To everyone's surprise, dozens of shiny, magical bottles appear intact on the shelf. Grabbing one of the vials, he warns morally that this medicine has to work by force. With wide eyes, the girl focuses completely on the suspicious purple liquid. To be perfectly honest, the kid is telling it like it is, and that's far from being a pharmacy cough syrup. Startled, the girl immediately recognizes the absurd color of that miraculous thing. Turning the bottle, the protagonist admits that the item seems quite rare and valuable indeed. In his mind, the game's description states that the potion literally cures any disease instantly. Completely shocked, the redhead can barely blink when she sees the overpowered item. By mentally calculating the profit, the boy can already imagine the cash he will make selling the stock. Blind but attentive, the platinum blonde asks again who the hell this crazy guy with all the legendary relics is. Exhaling through his mouth, our impromptu hero decides to simply cut off the interrogation. Straight to the point, he hands the liquid to the redhead and tells her to drink it without asking any questions. In an extremely serious tone, she reinforces that the two of them need to drink the potion at that exact second. Somewhat impatiently, he confesses that he's not in the mood to carry dead weight during the walk outside. In a very weak voice, the blind girl asks if there's a blessed dose left for her too. He quickly confirms the information, extending another gleaming vial towards her. Crying with emotion, the noblewoman can hardly believe her own luck in having stumbled upon the right guy. Supporting the injured girl, the protagonist assures her that she did incredibly well to endure everything up to that point. Immediately afterwards, pour the elixir directly into little Ramai's dry mouth. In a brutal act of magic, the blonde girl's body begins to emit a blinding light, healing all her wounds. With his jaw dropping, the boy watches the purifying magic happen live in front of him. Opening her eyes slowly, the girl whispers a sincere thank you to her savior. With a slight smile, he simply tells the little girl to go back to sleep to regain her sanity. At that instant, the elixir's thunderous effect cuts through the entire room like a shockwave. On the floor, the empty vials show that the absurd miracle has finally been accomplished. Under intense light, the redhead and the platinum blonde are healed, and 100% ready for war. Playing the mercenary, the protagonist jokes about demanding a hefty reward in the future. In tears, the little blind girl shouts to the winds that she can see again, while the redhead jumps for joy, feeling her legs. Watching the unrestrained crying, our boy feels a huge relief in his chest after all the tension. Quickly, she asks the pair to give the blonde some sacred space to breathe in peace in bed. Fast forward to the next day, and the morning sun is already shining directly through the window of the secret hideout. Sitting comfortably, the boy remarks that the city of Aldia is only 2 villages away from their current location. With a tired sigh, he warns that the journey on foot will take a considerable amount of time. Outraged to the core, the redhead tells him to go complain to the kidnappers about this whole mess. The platinum blonde then suggests that if someone possessed the legendary teleportation magic, the entire problem would already be solved. Laughing, the protagonist fully agrees that this magic would be a great help. In his own mind, he analyzes the mediocre status of this new body, bitterly lamenting his lack of appealing abilities. Reading a worn map, the noblewoman remembers that there was only one supreme being in the past capable of using the blessed teleportation. Abruptly changing the subject, the boy asks how the 3 of them are feeling physically today. Still processing the information, the 2 stare at the savior with completely dumbfounded expressions. Completely relieved, the platinum blonde thanks them again, saying that she is slowly getting used to her perfect vision. The redhead then confirms, standing up, that her injured leg is completely healed thanks to the miraculous juice from the previous night. Crossing her arms with a moral stance, she demands to be called by her name, Karen Dior Aldi, and forbids the guy from using nicknames. In the same vein, the platinum blonde formally presents herself as the great Nina Qualier Ansage. Pointing towards the bed, she reveals that the little sleeper's name is Ramai Tralia Albalra. Completely lost, the kid gets confused by the kilometer-long names and realizes that the real world is incredibly complex. Back to the main focus, the redhead Karen asks if the henchman will have the courage to play bodyguard until the end. Being completely cold and realistic, our hero categorically states that he cannot guarantee anyone's life on the road. Startled, the redhead's eyes widened, thinking he was going to back out halfway there. With a somber, veteran-like gaze, he lays it all out, saying that nothing in this twisted world is guaranteed, not even brute force. Deep down, the protagonist knows very well that this is no mere game, and spilled blood exacts a very high price. Assessing the whole mess, he warns that the enemies out there may be many, and their strength is a great mystery. Supporting the idea of fleeing, the sensible Nina says that the best path to survival is to avoid combat at all costs. Shaking hands tightly, they mutually agree that the whole group only has one chance to succeed. Banging the gavel, the boy promises to do the impossible so that no one will have to fight the bandits with their fists. Somewhat impatiently, Karen already asks curtly what the grand escape strategy they've devised is. Without much beating around the bush, he confesses that he doesn't have a brilliant, foolproof plan up his sleeve. With blank expressions, the girls stare at the supposed savior, completely disappointed by his curt reply. He quickly points to the map, explaining that the kidnappers will inevitably hunt the team down in the neighboring city. Right on paper, the kid shows that the obvious route is precisely the biggest trap of all. Making a strategic move, he reveals that they will head south, taking a forgotten shortcut to a smaller settlement. Worried about her wallet, the redhead raises the issue that the sneaky trip will cost a fortune they don't have. By displaying a bag full of coins, the little protagonist shows off the profit he stole from the camp and tells them to spend it as they please. With a voice trembling with insecurity, Nina throws out the burning question about the real reason for so much kindness. Somewhat suspicious of the handout, she remembers that the guy burned his own villain disguise for nothing, just to heal strangers. Nervous about the situation, our protagonist agrees, lightly scratching the back of his neck. Caught in his own web, he realizes he messed up badly with the lie about being a secret agent. To keep up appearances, the kid tells the girls to thank their parents for the ransom money. Suddenly, a little noise on the bed catches the attention of everyone in the room. Surprised by the scene, the boy asks if the sleepyhead has finally opened her eyes. In a sleepy voice, the little girl confirms, while the hero thinks the nap lasted far too long. Stretching his bones, he already dictates the next rule, ordering everyone to take a bath in the hidden river. The platinum blonde quickly raises her hand, suggesting the use of a purification spell. Somewhat awkwardly, our hero refuses the offer because he doesn't want to depend on a little girl to clean himself. In a joking tone, the little protagonist comments that this spell would be any spy's dream. Taking the lead, he warns that shining brightly in the forest will only attract the attention of bandits. Without wasting any time, the 3 girls solve the problem of the dirt right there in the enclosed space. Far away, the boy dives headfirst into the icy waters of the river to wash the barnacles off his body. Back at the secret base, the girls anxiously await the return of the mysterious agent. Now protected by intimidating black armor, the guy calls the gang for the final stage of the escape. Fully armored, the improvised Black Knight gives the marching order. A week later in the city of Aldia, a guard becomes desperate, shouting for urgent reports. Disguised among the crowd, our boy notices that the atmosphere there is incredibly tense. Walking leisurely through the streets, the three girls celebrate that they arrived safely at their destination. Startled, the captain of the guard nearly fell backward upon seeing the kingdom's elite safe and sound. Filled with gratitude, the girls turn around and thank the armored savior with hearts. Crying horribly, the soldier bows to the ground, promising to owe his own life to the hero. Regaining his composure, the soldier announces that a classy escort is already on its way for the young ladies. Curious, the platinum blonde asks what the next step of the great dark warrior will be. Without giving too much detail, the guy in the armor announces that he's going to take a vacation in the city. Somewhat suspicious, the redhead throws out the bait, asking if he doesn't have to answer to the spy bosses. Trembling at the base, our protagonist sweats cold inside his heavy helmet. In the kid's mind, the truth hurts because he has no plan and is just acting crazy. Overly excited, the guard invites the knight to retrieve a huge reward from the mansion. Inventing the first excuse that comes to mind, the hero says his body is destroyed and he needs a bed. Cutting to the chase, the Tin Knight orders the girls to follow the guard's orders and relax. With a giggle, the redhead agrees and reiterates her thanks once more. In a gesture of pure affection, our protagonist strokes the little blonde girl's head before leaving. With a sweet smile, the girl nods in agreement with her surrogate dad. Turning his back, the boy leaves the bomb in the captain's hand and walks away into the crowd. Completely moved, the soldier kisses the ground again in such reverence for the warrior. Embarrassed by the little show, the hero murmurs that he just wants to find a hole to hide in. The very obliging guard assures that the gates of the capital are open to the supreme savior. Fading over the horizon, the dark figure leaves the soldiers speechless. Shocked by the presence of the madman, a recruit asks the boss what kind of monster it was. Serious and tense, the captain replies that the guy is a walking power freak. Recalling the scene, the boss reveals that he used the magic appraisal and was only able to read an extremely rare level 8 item. In absolute shock, the guards freak out upon hearing about the insane difficulty of the aforementioned dungeon. Adding fuel to the fire, the captain points out that the warrior crushed the biggest crime syndicate without getting a scratch. To make matters worse, he points out that the man brought 3 VIP hostages and then cleaned the area himself. Reaching the obvious conclusion, the soldier asserts that the guy can only be a ruthless war veteran. Curious, a recruit mentions seeing the guy's face and immediately receives a violent slap on the head. Boiling with rage, the boss scolds the rookie for almost offending the armored savior. Demanding respect, he shouts that a madman who rescued the elite cannot be treated like any ordinary civilian. In the corner, the other soldiers gossip, impressed, about the use of 3 legendary elixirs in the bush. Taken by surprise, the captain's eyes widen upon hearing about the ultimate healing item. The subordinate quickly explains that even the redhead's rotten leg was restored in the blink of an eye. The astonished guard recounts that the Black Knight treated the divine juice as if it were tap water. Laughing nervously, the entire troop agrees that the little protagonist is either a billionaire or completely crazy. Feeling the weight of the information, the commander orders an emergency report to the Hunters Guild. Saluting, the recruit runs off to spread the scandalous rumor throughout the city. It dawns on the soldier that the redhead Karen is simply the daughter of the kingdom's most powerful noble house. Furthermore, the platinum-haired Nina carries the pure blood of the founders of the Holy Church. Rounding out the trinity, the blonde Ramai is the sole heiress of the man who controls the continent's money. Putting the pieces together, the battalion is perplexed to learn that the hero treated the Golden Trio as mere brats. Consolidating the legend, the captain is absolutely certain that the armor possesses relics from death dungeons. In a complete frenzy, the military chief swears up and down that the guy is from the Empire's supreme secret organization. Completely oblivious to the crazy rumors, our boy finally takes a stroll through the center of the capital. Observing the architecture, he finds it very bizarre how everything is identical to the map in the screen game. Focusing on the main objective, the boy soon spots the enormous building of the Adventurers Guild. Even wanting to go for a full stroll, the protagonist's body screams for a soft bed. To make matters worse, the city's residents keep staring at the old, rolling wreck. Nearby, some children point at the dark armor, murmuring with admiration. Completely awkward, the makeshift hero tries to ignore the curious stares of the crowd. Thinking quickly, he remembers that the black suit is an overpowered piece of equipment that exudes pure combat pressure. Giving up on the walk, the guy quickens his pace to hide in the first available inn. Suddenly, the kids surround the warrior, shouting that he looks like the coolest knight in legend. Without warning, a cute little girl jumps onto the protagonist's metal leg, grabbing it with all her might. Far from that mess, the redhead Karen finally arrives at the mansion and is crushed by a bear hug. Red with shame, the noblewoman demands that her tearful father release the bone before she loses her temper. Trying to break free, the redhead asks for a moment, stating that she needs to breathe after being held so tightly. Swallowing his tears, the nobleman agrees and praises his daughter's healed leg as if it were a divine miracle. Displaying perfect mobility, the girl struts around the room praising the absurd effects of the elixir. Then she recalls how the mysterious savior pulled the vial from his pocket, without the slightest ceremony. With a mischievous little smile, the Duke's daughter imitates the knight's gruff voice, demanding a future reward. Reading the reports, the old Duke raises an eyebrow, suspicious of the whole story. Curious, Karen asks if the solo rescue was a direct order from her father himself. Denying it immediately, the wealthy man claims that if he had such connections, he would have bought the elixir years ago to cure her leg. Completely lost, the girl tries to understand why the secret agent didn't seem to know the other two noblewomen. Scratching his chin, the Duke deduces that the solitary actions fit the profile of an intelligence spy. Putting the pieces together, the redhead swears that the guy had advance information about the dangerous criminal syndicate. Carefree in some random alley, our protagonist can only think about making a real bed. Determined to return the favor, Karen announces that she will send a thank you letter to the hero's organization. Quickly, the father cuts the conversation short, warning that exposing a secret agent will put a noose around the poor guy's neck. Her eyes widening, the daughter asks if the Duke has finally discovered which group the Black Knight belongs to. Pulling out another piece of paper, the old man shows that the bandits were captured near a distant town. Recalling the map of the hideout, the redhead Karen solves the riddle about the hero's geographical knowledge. Excited, she exclaims that this explains why the fellow chose to take such a long path through the forest. The Duke has struck the gavel, agreeing that the agent's profile matches the main suspect perfectly. In a serious voice, the nobleman reveals that the group is called Verder and answers directly to the Empire. Shocked, the girl repeats the name, feeling a chill run through her body just remembering the rumors. In her mind, the image of the golden emblem of the secret organization in charge of public order pops up. Immediately, memories of legends about the kingdom's most ruthless soldiers flood his thoughts. With a terrible reputation, Verder is known for being composed exclusively of elite, top-level hunters. Alone in the streets, the kid has no idea that he has just been promoted to supreme commander of the worst faction on the continent. Changing his tone, the father demands that Karen swear to keep the secret of the agent's false identity. Looking out the window, the nobleman calculates that they need to repay the enormous debt of gratitude before the night leaves. With an idea in mind, she sends her daughter to summon a maid to begin searching the city. Without a second thought, the redhead spins on her heels and runs like a rocket through the mansion's corridors. Slamming the door shut, she leaves the old Duke alone, plotting the next step in the hunt. Seated in his elegant chair, the Duke is already planning to use his political influence to ease the pressure on the fake spy. On the other side of town, the heads of the Ansage and Albalra families arrive at exactly the same crazy conclusion. Jumping ahead to the next day at the inn's restaurant, our protagonist finally satisfies his ravenous hunger. Starting a conversation, the pot-bellied innkeeper celebrates the arrival of new and peaceful blood in town. Casually, the old man asks if the boy happened to see a giant brute in black armor. Taking a bite of his fried egg, the guy lies through his teeth, praising his own good manners. Disguising his tension, the protagonist claims to have come from very far away and that he doesn't know of any knight. At that very moment, the tavern door is burst open and an imperial soldier rushes in, puffing and panting. Without mincing words, the guard yells, asking if a warrior in dark armor was staying at the place. With his heart in his mouth, the bar owner warns the kid to keep his mouth shut about any rumors. Desperate inside, the little protagonist is already mentally begging for a miracle to get him out of this mess. Feigning ignorance, the tavern owner dismisses the guard, assuring him that only normal guests are there. Looking grumpy, the recruit promises to come back later to check and leaves grumbling. Letting out a sigh of relief, the boy prays that bizarre scene will never happen again. Amused by the situation, the bar owner laughs at the confusion, completely ignoring the fact that he has hidden the most wanted man in the kingdom. But the peace doesn't last even 5 minutes when the door swings open again. Entering the brutality, a madman warns that there's a huge manhunt going on in the main street. In the blink of an eye, a nun from the Holy Church appears on the balcony demanding news of the armored man. Hidden in the corner, our protagonist gets a chill down his spine when he hears the woman speak on behalf of the clergy. Lying for the second time that day, the innkeeper swore he didn't see any metal parts in the room. After a cold thanking, the nun turns her back and leaves, leaving a very heavy atmosphere in the Almost immediately, an armed officer bursts through the entrance, asking the same question as always. Shrinking in his chair, the kid is one step away from digging a hole in the ground to bury himself in. With a forced smile, the old man at the bar repeats the same canned response, dismissing the woman. Leaving quickly, the officer grumbles in frustration, not knowing where the target fled. Turning to the customer, the tavern owner jokes that the day is too busy for a quiet town. Trembling like a leaf, the protagonist realizes that the net is closing in faster and faster. Holding his head in shock, the owner of the place finally understands that the three greatest powers in the city are after the same guy. Panicked and silent, the boy doesn't understand what on earth he did to deserve all this insane persecution. Feeling the pressure mounting, the innkeeper orders the boy to get out of town before it all happens to him too. Wandering aimlessly through the narrow streets, the protagonist desperately wonders how he will get out of this mess alive. Returning to the comfort of the mansion, the older sister closely inspects Karen's leg. Feeling zero pain, the redhead announces she's ready to run a marathon if needed. Smiling with relief, the redhead celebrates the end of the sad routine of caring for her bedridden sister. Lying in bed, the youngest sighs, confessing that she's super happy but guilt weighs on her chest. Crossing her legs, Karen reflects on the whereabouts of the mysterious Black Knight. Looking at the ceiling, she finds it bizarre that no one can find a giant madman carrying a small child. With a confident little smile, she asserts that the agent deliberately covered his own tracks. Entering the room, the eldest confirms that her father put the entire army on the street to do the job. Sitting on the edge, the sister asks if Karen is worried about the scolding the hero will get for using the elixir. Sighing deeply, the redhead tells it like it is, saying that the guy treated the million-dollar business like it was trash. Tapping her chin, she surmises that the spy doesn't want to leave any trace linking him to the secret organization. Collapsing into a lazy state on her pillow, Karen begs the universe not to punish the savior under any circumstances. With a giggle, the sister praises the redhead's soft heart, who almost never cares about anyone. Closing her eyes stubbornly, the little noblewoman defends herself, saying it's just gratitude and nothing more. Out of nowhere, another girl with red hair runs through the door, frantically calling Karen. Breathless, she recounts that her rescue friends came to visit and spoke very highly of the armored warrior. He recalled that the platinum blonde and the blonde spent an entire hour fawning over the hero. Clinging to her sister, the newcomer teases, saying that the redhead is the one who's most smitten with the guy. Turning as red as a pepper, the little girl angrily denies everything, her voice trembling with shame. Meanwhile, back at the tavern, the owner warns the boy that things have gotten really bad in the city. Confirming the rumor, he warns that the hunt for the night has become a matter of maximum security on every corner. Pointing his finger in the boy's face, the old man insists that he can only be the most wanted man at the moment. Cornered, the protagonist plays it cool, asking what kind of cruel punishment awaits the alleged offender. Laughing nervously, the innkeeper imagines that, at best, the guy would be banished from the kingdom forever. Beating his chest, the old man swears he will cover for the fugitive because his heart is not made of stone. But then he drops the bombshell that the reward for any clue has risen to an absurd 3 million in the local currency. Spitting out the drink, the protagonist's eyes widen in disbelief at his fortune, and he asks why the old man didn't hand him over immediately. Winking, the old man confesses that he would love the money, but prefers to avoid trouble with the big fish that the three families are looking for. Totally indignant, the kid tries to explain for the 1000th time that he's not a spy at all. Giving up the argument, the innkeeper advises the guest to put on his armor tomorrow and leave very early. Smiling, the bar owner tells him to enjoy his last day in the city before the inevitable escape. Once outside, the boy reflects that at least he'll get to enjoy the view before being chased away. Watching the sunset, he breathes a sigh of relief that he wasn't arrested right away. Wandering aimlessly, the boy climbs up to the central square to get a better view of the entire city. Suddenly, the gigantic clock tower catches the eye, gleaming in the golden light of the late afternoon. Feeling a pang of nostalgia, he remembers that in the game, the entrance to that place cost an arm and a leg. Climbing the spiral staircase, he grumbles that it doesn't matter if he spends money since he's going to be evicted tomorrow anyway. Reaching the top, the breathtaking view makes all the fatigue of the climb worthwhile. But the peace is short-lived when he stumbles upon a bizarre detail beneath the bell tower. A mysterious woman wearing a chic morning dress and a mask covering her eyes is standing there in the shadows. His eyes widening, he stares at the strange figure that looks like it came straight out of a horror movie. Completely shocked, the protagonist can't take his eyes off the incredibly chic stranger. Breaking the ice, he awkwardly says hello just so he doesn't seem like a maniac staring at the woman. Turning her face slowly, the masked lady replies with a soft, enigmatic voice. In his mind, an old rumor from the game Popcorn reminded him of a super rare NPC that only appeared there in the tower. Trying to hide his curiosity, he pushes away the bizarre thought and focuses on the view from up there. Starting a conversation, the woman comments on how the scenery helps to clear her head, which is full of problems. Nodding his head, the boy leans against the railing, enjoying the cool breeze on his face. Intrigued, he bluntly asks why such a refined young woman would climb to such an isolated place. Giving a small, knowing smile, she says she needed to clear her head just like him. Changing the subject abruptly, the masked lady drops the bombshell, asking if he knows someone called the Black Knight. Breaking a cold sweat down his spine, the protagonist freezes completely, feeling the ground disappear beneath his feet. Trying to maintain his composure, he gives a nervous little laugh and confirms that the rumor is on everyone's lips. In a firm voice, the woman confesses that she is leading a relentless search because she wants to meet the hero in person. Playing dumb, the boy asks if the knight in question has caused any major trouble in the city. Startled, she waves her hands, denying everything and insisting that they are not looking for him because of any crime. Completely confused, the boy questions what the real objective of the chase is after all. Lowering her head, the disguised noblewoman apologizes and says that the real reason is a gigantic state secret. Sighing with relief inwardly, our hero at least discovers that he hasn't become the Empire's #1 enemy. Hearing the sound of the wheels below, the lady announces that her private carriage has finally arrived. Turning her back, she bids farewell elegantly and begins to descend the steps. In an act of courage, the little protagonist draws her attention by asking if the search has a chance of success. With absurd confidence, the masked woman bets that they will soon have juicy news about the target. Giving a wink from under her mask, she thanks the young commoner for his concern. Alone again in the bell tower, he watches the elegant figure descend until she disappears from sight. Scratching the back of his neck, the boy can't get out of his head who the hell that rich and strange woman could be. Already on the street at night, the luxurious carriage stops and little Karen runs down to greet the masked woman. Pulling on her sister's skirt, the redhead swears that their disguise will work perfectly. Giving a quick lecture, the older woman tells the younger one to stop thinking she's all that just because she tidied up her clothes. Adjusting her mask, the woman apologizes for the scolding and thanks the little girl for her help. Smiling, the older sister confesses that she loved the surprise nighttime ride. Getting into the carriage, she immediately blurts out that she bumped into a handsome tourist at the top of the clock tower. Immediately, Karen's radar goes off, finding the whole story extremely suspicious. The masked woman quickly cuts the conversation short, assuring everyone that she also thought the guy was strange, but that after talking to him she realized he was a nice guy. Laughing softly, she comments that the tourist in question used very casual words, quite different from the standard language of the local nobility. Sighing in frustration, the older sister says that she tried to get information out of the knight in black armor, but the guy didn't know anything. Leaning against the window, the redhead remembers that the old duke thinks the Verder spy left town a long time ago. Suddenly, the woman in black freezes in place, remembering a very important detail the tourist mentioned. Curious, Karen jumps off the bench wanting to know all about the stranger's gossip. With a twinkle in her eye, the masked woman compliments the young man's charm and mentions the cool scar near his left eye. Describing the birthmark, she confirms to her younger sister the exact location of the scar on the boy's face. Hearing the description, the little redhead freezes, bangs on the window forcefully, and yells at the coachman to turn the cart around. In complete desperation, she orders the car to be played directly to the clock tower as quickly as possible. With wide eyes, the older sister asks if the little one has completely lost her mind along the way. Yelling at the top of her lungs, Karen reveals that the mysterious hero also has the exact same scar on his face. Filled with rage, the redhead huffed, revealing she had deliberately omitted the information to prevent the Empire from finding her savior before her father. In shock, the older woman realizes the colossal mistake she made in speaking face-to-face with the legend and letting him slip away. Skidding around the curve, the luxurious carriage accelerates, tearing through the nighttime streets of the capital in a frantic chase. Inside the cabin, despair reigns as the two noblewomen prepare to hunt down the boy before he disappears off the map. Descending the tower stairs, the chic lady runs off at an absurd pace. Karen, meanwhile, flies up the stairs, panting with exhaustion, thinking the hero has disappeared again. Reaching the empty parapet, the redhead lets out a curse, realizing she narrowly missed out on the legend. Cut to the next morning at the imposing headquarters of the Hunters Guild. Inside the office, the branch manager is almost tearing his hair out in despair at the lack of information. Trembling with the reports in his hand, he mutters that a supposed member of the dreaded Verder is in town. Reading aloud, the boss confirms that the guy in the black armor single-handedly crushed the worst crime faction, Furthermore, he saved the trio of daughters from the kingdom's most powerful families, and is still out there sightseeing. Scratching his head, the guild master calculates that no matter what happens, the Empire is definitely watching. Shouting orders, he tells everyone to redouble their vigilance to try and find the old walking wreck. Outside, the Black Knight walks along calmly after helping a little girl cross the street. Thanking her with a smile, the child's mother has no idea who the brute really is. Patting his own forehead, the hero grumbles that he must have drawn too much attention by doing a good deed. Back in the office, the master sighs wearily, wishing the hunt would end once and for all. Suddenly, the door bursts open, and the secretary slides desperately into the room. Screaming at the top of her lungs, the girl announces that the black target himself has just crossed the front door. Shocked, the guild master feels his soul leave his body, thinking the secretary is playing a prank on him. Flying down the stairs, he trips over his own feet trying to see the bizarre scene with his own eyes. There in the main hall, the Black Tin Knight is standing like a statue in front of the counter. Swallowing hard, the boss slowly approaches, trying to maintain his composure as the leader of the place. Sweating profusely, he forces a weak smile and uses the sweetest voice in the world to greet the monster. In the back of the room, the hunters gossip, shocked to see the tough boss acting like a frightened kitten. Stuttering slightly, the master politely asks the reason for the living legend's visit. In a calm voice, the armored man replies immediately that he only came to take a look around the place. Pulling the rope, the boss thanks them for coming with a warmth no one had ever seen before. With wide eyes, the leader repeats the phrase, "Take a look," and his brain starts frying with theories. Afraid of having offended the visitor, the master stammers, asking if he had said something foolish. Raising his hands, the leader denies everything and swears that the guild is honored by the Imperial agent's inspection. Mentally, the suit-wearing executive connects the dots, believing that the glance is code for deadly espionage. With a chilling feeling, the master deduces that the guy is so badass that he prefers not to lie and acts with blatant mockery. Swallowing his tears, the branch leader thinks to himself that the guy is much more formidable than the legends tell. Looking back, the guild leader always dreamed of joining the famous Verter and going head-to-head with the elite. But looking at the Colossus head-on, the dream turned into a nightmare, and he realizes that the level of power is completely unfair. With great respect, he offers a complete tour and invites the knight to his private office for a conversation. Shrugging, the protagonist agrees to the idea, thinking it's cool to be treated like a king in the middle of the guild. Guiding the way, the chief asks for passage, and the hunters part the Red Sea with great fear. Whispering in a corner, a group of adventurers discreetly points to the strange visitor. Sitting at a nearby table, the group assesses the fight, imagining the absurd strength of the brass warrior. Scratching his chin, one of the boys tries to gauge the true intentions of someone so strong. Offering his 2 cents, the colleague suggests that the crazy guy walked around the lobby with his chest exposed just to provoke a fight with someone. Shrugging her shoulders, one of the huntresses whispers that if the guild master bowed down, then there's no way anyone can challenge him. Trembling in his boots, a recruit says that the guy must be at least rank S to command so much respect. Laughing nervously, another adventurer jokes that fighting that brute is like asking to die for nothing. Completely fine inside, the kid in the armor listens to the whispers and finds the widespread panic amusing. Sighing, he realizes that any misstep will only further fuel the legend of the dark monster of Verter. After a polite farewell, the guild master escorts the visitor to the sidewalk covered in autumn leaves. Inwardly fuming, the boss swears to himself that the association won't pick a fight with this walking nightmare. Walking down the street, the boy reflects on the guild hunters, thinking they all stared at him like psychopaths. Mentally, the kid finds it funny how the veterans are trembling, thinking they're facing death in person. Thinking back, he remembers that in the game the branch leader was a jerk, but there he was the biggest suck-up in the world. Sighing in confusion, our hooded hero continues his journey, not understanding the moral of having had a VIP escort. Banging the gavel, he concludes that despite the setbacks, the Adventurers Guild was a fine tour. Stepping firmly onto the cobblestone sidewalk, the Tin Knight wonders what the next tourist attraction will be. But the sun beating down on the metal works against him, and he grumbles that this armor is too hot and heavy to enjoy the ride. Suddenly, a loud noise cuts through the air and a gigantic carriage turns the corner, stopping abruptly right in front of him. Pulling the door open, little Karen leaps out of the cabin and shouts to the winds, celebrating that she has finally cornered the runaway. Fixing his eyes on the carriage's gold coat of arms, the protagonist connects the dots and remembers the Duke Ricasso's daughter. Furious and red with rage, the little redhead demands to know where the giant was hiding all this time. Somewhat shyly, the brass warrior replies bluntly that he was just sleeping in a regular inn room. Left hanging, the girl huffs indignantly, swearing she even sent the city's rats to hunt the guy down and nothing. With the utmost audacity, the protagonist confesses that he bought the tavern owner's silence with a hefty sum of money. Surprised, the girl's mouth drops open as she realizes how her own search has leaked out in all directions. Recalling his past, the boy jokes that in the end her tactic of searching the city failed miserably. Without giving in, the Duke's daughter grumbles, huffing, and turns her face away, pretending not to care about the insult. Suddenly, the masked woman from last night pokes her head out of the carriage, drawing attention. His eyes widening beneath his helmet, the boy instantly recognizes from her voice and hair that she's the same girl from the tower. Lifting her dress, the lady expresses her gratitude with absurd elegance for the great help the knight has provided. Without the mask, she confesses that the gratitude she feels is so choked up that she doesn't even know how to pay the ransom. Cutting the emotion short, the woman bluntly asks if the hero is currently free of commitments. Startled by the intimacy, the boy swallows hard, anticipating a trap or a very reckless outing. Tripping him up, the redhead authoritatively orders the giant to follow the streetcar straight to her father's mansion. Surprised by the presumptuous invitation, the older lady merely stares at her sister, not understanding the younger girl's lack of manners. Considering the worst-case scenario, the boy calculates that if he refuses, he could be executed under the laws of the duchy. Shrugging bluntly, Karen insists that he get on the bench without making any unnecessary draw. Swallowing his tears, the little protagonist immediately turns his back, denying that he feels too guilty or busy for that mess. Stomping her little feet, the little girl refuses to accept the excuse and drags the Tin Knight away by force. Displaying a wide smile, the masked lady opens the door of the elegant carriage that awaits you. Dragged to the slaughterhouse, the boy swallows hard and already imagines the worst possible torture. With a victorious little smile, the redhead sits next to her sister and celebrates the capture. Sweating profusely inside his armor, the protagonist thinks he's becoming a political prisoner without having done anything. Breaking the ice, the older lady thanks him again for not having exposed the noble families to ridicule. Scratching his head, the hero agrees, somewhat confused, not understanding what prestige he has saved. Getting straight to the point, the petite redhead raises her hand and says she needs to clear up a doubt that's been bothering her. Sensing danger, the boy shrinks back in his chair, finding her formality bizarre. Karen slammed her hand on the seat and got angry, yelling that if he preferred rudeness, she was ready. Giving the green light, the Iron Knight orders her to spill the beans once and for all. Without beating around the bush, the redhead asks about the legendary elixirs used in the forest and wants to know the truth. Casting a suspicious glance, she asks if the black metal body is hidden in the city because of the exorbitant cost. Trying to keep up appearances, the kid denies everything, saying there was no fight over a silly item. Shocked, the girl's eyes widen, unable to believe the man's calmness. Crossing her arms, Karen insists on asking if the guy is sure he doesn't want help with the debt. Taking the lid, the older sister offers him all the power of the duchy if he explains the situation. Completely lost in the rich people's talk, the little protagonist just shakes his head, confused by the insistence. Mentally, he cries, wanting to shout that everything is all right and that there's no magic loan shark after him. Regaining his composure, the warrior declared that he regretted nothing, and that the important thing was that her leg was healed. Acting tough, he tells his family to stop worrying because his problems are his own business. Dropping the love bomb, the kid assures them that he prefers to see them smiling than bothering them with debt. Melted, the older lady agrees and sighs, thinking the spy is the kindest human being in the world. Changing the subject abruptly, the gruff voice from the helmet blurts out that he has a small favor to ask. Soon the sisters' eyes are glued to the metal, awaiting the order that will change the fate of the empire. In a deadly serious tone, the hero asks them to speak with the old duke as soon as they arrive. Looking unfriendly, he explains that he needs them to go easy on him if their father wants to rip his throat out. Startled, the little girl's eyes widen, unable to believe the madman's panic. Screaming with indignation, the redhead questions whether his life is worth a bottle of medicine and nothing more. Feeling the weight on his shoulders, the protagonist swears up and down that he's just a commoner and is terrified of rich people's politics. In his corner, the kid mentally reaffirms that securing his own safety is the main goal. Facing the madman, the sisters fall into a profound silence, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Sighing softly, the older lady finds the panic over the metalwork cute and human. Pondering the phrase, Karen realizes that he cleverly circumvented the question about the elixir debt. Confirming the agreement, the two nod their heads, promising to protect the giant. Lying on the bench, the little redhead swears to protect her savior even if her own father breathes fire. Joining in the joke, the eldest reinforces that the dukedom is eternally indebted, and the deal is sealed. Taking advantage of the opportunity, little Karen raises a pertinent question about the trip to the mansion. Curious, she asks if the knight will have the courage to sit at the dinner table wearing that bucket on his head. Tapping his metal boot, he swears he thought removing the equipment right there in the middle of the carriage would be impolite. Completely flushed, the redhead tries to hide that deep down she really wanted to see his face. Laughing, the sister points to the brat's hard face and breaks the tension in the room. Confused, the little girl makes a blank face, pretending she didn't understand the indirect message. Reflecting in silence, the lady perceives the purity of the young man who neither judges nor snubs anyone. In her mind, it dawns on her that the heavy metal is just a defense against the deceitfulness of the court. Completely charmed, the older woman murmurs that now she understands why the little one fell for the brute. Admiring the knight, she realizes that he is the exact opposite of the other hunters who think they are the best. Closing her eyes, the lady remembers how ordinary adventurers spit out envy and trample on the weak for fame. Comparing the guys to noblemen, he concludes that money and power go to the heads of those with little morals. Opening her heart, she acknowledges that the hero has the strength to destroy mountains, but prefers to act like a pawn. The older woman, overcome with emotion, internally thanks him for not abusing his power to demand absurd favors. Teasing the little one, the lady nudges her, warning that Karen is sweating bullets next to the big guy. Muttering, the redhead tells her sister to go to hell, and says she doesn't care about the knight's ogre-like demeanor. Sticking her tongue out, the little girl argues that it's better to be saved by a brute than by a snobbish dandy. Laughing softly, the older woman finds it hilarious that the Empire's elite are terrified of such a humble fellow. Glancing sideways, she notices that her younger sister's teasing is pure charm from a love-struck preteen. Drawing on her memory, the lady recalls Karen's life surrounded by opportunistic old men at court parties. Without peers of the same age, the brat was always sidelined for not having the manners of a nobleman. Sitting at the parties, the little girl could only hear the other families seeking wedding rings for money. Isolated, the little redhead spent sleepless nights feeling useless amidst all that mess. With a heavy heart, the sister recalls how the snobbish old men never paid any attention to a sick child. Sighing with relief, she looks at Karen smiling and realizes that everything has changed after the rescue in the forest. Shouting excitedly, the little girl jumps off the bench, pulling her sister's arm and inviting her for a walk outside the duchy. Leaning against the leather seat, the brass giant remains firmly focused solely on avoiding bigger problems. Aware of the mess, the eldest daughter knows that the healing elixir was already reason enough for her father to create political turmoil. Laughing inwardly, she recalls how the hero tried to buy their protection, fearing the duke's reprimand. Looking at the black helmet, the noblewoman wonders if there is anyone else in the world with such a foolish heart. With shining eyes, the lady dreams of inventing any excuse to keep the warrior close to the family. Subtly, she throws out the bait by asking how long he plans to stay in the capital. With a kind smile, the woman offers to pay for a permanent house if he wants to become a neighbor of the nobility. Sweating nervously, the boy changes the subject, saying that the city is nice but the holidays depend on his busy schedule. Misinterpreting, the lady deduces that Werther's missions do not leave the imperial agent in peace. In her romantic mind, the hero's hands only exist to save innocent lives without asking for anything in return. Fixing her eyes on her smiling little sister, the older one concludes that just as Karen's heart was saved. Banging her head, the lady resolved that even noble selfishness must bow before that pure soul. Standing in front of the mansion, the Tin Knight's jaw drops at the size of the grounds. Looking around, he realizes that the main house looks more like a castle. It's so gigantic. Suddenly, the butler opens the thick double wooden doors with all the ceremony in the world. Lined up like an army, the employees bow their backs, welcoming the honored visitor. Widening his eyes beneath his helmet, the protagonist wonders what kind of madness this is. With a broad smile, the eldest lady explains that it's just the family's classy way of showing respect. Stuck in place, the kid threatens to turn around, thinking that this is too much for him. Pulling her metal hand, the noblewoman warns that if he lives, the annoying old folks will complain like crazy. With a somewhat somber look, she vows to deal with any snob who bothers her. Trembling slightly, the hero agrees, swallowing hard, fearing a confrontation with the Empire's elite. Running ahead, Karen excitedly pulls out her other brass hand to show off the whole house. Completely surrendered, the giant merely sighs and follows the girls into the luxurious hall. Bowing, the captain of the guard salutes, thanking the hero for saving the little girl. With impeccable posture, the housekeeper announces that the dukes are waiting in their private office. Saying goodbye to the girls, she asks the captain to escort the guest to the boss's room. Smiling, the older lady says that the two of them will wait in an adjacent room, ready to intervene if trouble breaks out. With shining eyes, she assures that if any trouble breaks out, help will arrive immediately. Nodding his head, the warrior agrees, finding it good to have a guaranteed escape plan. Cutting through the tension, the guard dryly announces that it's time to enter the big fish room. Slightly drawing his sword, the captain demands that the visitor leave his weapons at the door for safekeeping. Raising an eyebrow, the soldier stamps his foot, saying that even in the Duke's house there are strict rules. Firm in his stance, he insists that no one enters armed in the presence of the city's highest authority. Chuckling beneath his armor, the protagonist jokes that he's stronger with his bare hands than armed. Shocked by the audacity, the captain's eyes widen, unable to believe the madman's brazenness. Huffing with rage, the soldier feels his blood boil, thinking the heavy metal is mocking him. Confirming what the hero said, he reveals that fighting without a weapon is not a joke, but the pure truth. In his mind, the game plays, reminding him that this useless body doesn't even know how to hold a knife properly. Imagining the comical scene, he predicts that he would receive a humiliating beating if he tried to strike with a sword. On the other hand, brute force guarantees an overwhelming victory with the overwhelming strength of the new body. Swallowing his pride, the captain accepts the apology but promises to keep a close eye on things during the meeting. Drawing the sword from his waist, the protagonist carefully hands over the elegant blade. Placing it on the table, the guard notices the strange shine of the weapon, which doesn't even seem to be made of normal steel. Sighing deeply, the knight walks down the corridor, praying not to make a mistake in front of the Duke. Looking at the sword, the system screen displays, clearly stating that it is a masterpiece of the highest level. In the game description, the weapon called Black Blade negates any defense, but its luck stat is terrible. Reading the captain's thoughts, the boy advises that if he wants to test the toy, he only needs to ask later. Leaving their weapons behind, the noble sisters gaze at the sword, marveling at its lethal beauty. Slamming the office door shut, the hero is left with the family's bigwigs. Outside, silence reigns as Karen keeps her eyes fixed on the gleaming gun on the table. Pushing the soldier, the little girl demands that he show her the toy up close without making a fuss. Drooling over the blade, the redhead almost has a heart attack from so much anxiety to touch the magic sword. Laughing, the captain tries to calm the beast, promising to show it with the utmost care. Holding it by the handle, he comments that the blade seems to be made of pure glass and is very fragile. Swinging in the air, the sword emits a thin whistle that sends shivers down the spines of the two girls. Straightening her posture, Karen asks the soldier what the giant hero's fighting style is. Teaching how to hold the handle, the guard shows the little girl the correct way to hold the elite weapon. Confirming that the girl is okay, he warns that the thing weighs more than it looks. With a broad smile, the redhead puts all the strength of both hands into preparing to lift the toy. Slowly releasing the captain, he feels the weight fall directly into the slender arms of the petite noblewoman. In a cry of despair, Karen can't withstand the blow and the sword sinks towards the ground. Falling like a meteor, the blade's tip strikes directly against the hard marble stones. In a deathly silence, everyone's eyes widen, waiting for the fancy weapon to shatter into 1,000 pieces. To everyone's surprise, the sword pierced the stone floor like a hot knife through butter, effortlessly. Screaming in fright, the guard tears his hair out of his head, unable to believe the bizarre sight he has just witnessed. Trembling with fear, the little girl cries out for help and begs the soldier to take back his weapon. Assessing the madness, the captain concludes that with such an absurd cut, any armor of war is worthless. Breaking a cold sweat, he realizes that the dark warrior from Verdure wasn't lying when he said he was more lethal without his sword. Sheathing his trembling weapon, the soldier assures the ladies that everything is under control. Breathing a sigh of relief, the older sister thanks the heavens that disaster was averted. Inside the library, the two girls are gossiping, sitting and having afternoon tea, waiting for the meeting to end. Listening behind the door, Karen confirms that her father isn't yelling at the mysterious knight. Shaking her head, the sister agrees, sighing that the hero's morality certainly intimidated the Duke. With her eyes closed, the older woman points out that the dark, brass-clad warrior has a frightening aura of command. Completing the thought, the lady points out that even his hoarse voice commands a respect worthy of a king. Imagining the scene, the girl thinks of her father as an unwavering leader who never bends the knee. Sighing with pride, the sister deduces that the old man must be being educated on the legend of Verdure. With a disgusted look on her face, Karen complains that she hates seeing her parents acting arrogantly towards the savior. Getting up from the armchair, the little redhead grumbles that this life in politics is a pit of falsehood. Raising an eyebrow, the older woman notices the little girl's exaggerated concern for the giant hero. In a sarcastic tone, the lady nudges Karen, warning her that she needs to relax and stop whining for nothing. Laughing, the little girl points out that she's not angry, but worried that the stones on the ground might chip her beloved blade. Crossing her arms, the redhead defends herself, assuring everyone that the sword is so sharp it cuts even the air. Looking confused, the sister gets up and bets that the little brat can't even lift the gun properly on her own. Sitting by the window, the older redhead laughs at Karen's pout, who hates to admit her own weakness. Furious, the short girl crosses her hands behind her back and turns her face away, stamping her foot on the ground like a spoiled child. Sighing in frustration, the redhead swallows her pride, admitting that she can't handle the heavy sword. With a gentle smile, the older lady announces that in the future the little girl will have many chances to play with the magic weapon. She reminded everyone that the most important thing now is to enjoy the time with the hero who saved her life. Knocking on the door, suddenly the doorknob turns and the brass knight enters the library. The sister excitedly raises her hands, greeting the visitor with a sweet smile. In the corner of the room, Karen feels her heart race just seeing the brute arrive safe and sound. Observing from afar the small note, his serious posture concealing the magic sword behind his body. Confused, she whispers to her eldest daughter that she doesn't understand how her father released the giant so easily after using the elixir. Squinting, the lady also finds it very strange that the Duke hasn't made a scene at all. Pondering the scene, the little redhead wonders if the big hero refused to accept any treasure as a thank you. Shrugging, his older sister imagines that refusing a reward is typical of someone as humble as him. Deep down, the girls know that a gift from the duchy would be an immeasurable fortune for any commoner. Looking back, the noblewomen recall other visits, where people tried to push marriages solely out of financial interest. Curious, Karen rests her chin on her hand and wonders what the face hidden behind the black can looks like. Looking away, the older woman lies, saying she doesn't care, but in reality, she's dying of curiosity. Crossing her arms, little Karen teases her sister, betting that if the guy is handsome, the older one will monopolize him in an instant. The lady in red defends herself and promises to divide the giant warrior, so everyone can be happy. With a blank look on her face, the short girl glances sideways at her sister, not believing the flimsy excuse. Feeling jealousy burning in the air, the two stare at each other with invisible sparks flying from their eyes. In the end, the sisters silently agree that competing for the old tin can's attention is a waste of time for now. Breaking the tense atmosphere, the older woman sighs, saying that in the end she just wants to know the true face of her savior. Nodding, the redhead grumbles that this closed armor only increases the mystery surrounding the Imperial agent. Tapping her leg, she huffs indignantly, her curiosity slowly killing her. Cut to half an hour ago inside the private office where the atmosphere with the Duke was extremely tense. Breaking into a cold sweat, Karen's father desperately wonders how on earth he's going to deal with a member of Werther's elite. Facing the giant black figure of the hero, the nobleman feels a bad shiver down his spine from the silent pressure. Clasping his sweaty hands, the Duke tries to understand why a cold-blooded assassin is being so polite in the room. In the rich man's mind, the brute is just testing the family to see if the debts of gratitude will be repaid. Pulling at his tie, he calculates that treating the living legend with disdain is the same as signing the duchy's death certificate. Fearing the worst, the Duke bets that the spy can ask for anything he wants, and no one will dare to refuse. With his heart in his throat, Karen's father knows that confronting the secret organization is a losing battle. Reflecting on the political context, he feels chills imagining the power that Werther wields behind the scenes. Staring at the black helmet, the frustrated nobleman cannot read any emotion on the warrior's hidden face. Devising a desperate strategy, he suggests that offering a huge reward is the best way to get rid of the debt. Nervously, the Duke's wife whispers to him, wondering if the peaceful visit is nothing more than a test of loyalty. Nodding his head, the old man admits that he hates negotiating blindly with such unpredictable monsters. With a sigh, he realizes that any slip-up could turn his family into a target for the Empire's assassins. Feeling his blood run cold, he thinks about what price will be paid for using such a legendary elixir. At a glance, the Duke stares at the visor of the armor, trying to guess the true intentions of the silent protagonist. On the other hand, the kid in the armor is frozen like a statue out of sheer fear of saying the wrong thing. Swallowing his tears, the father decides to play it safe to avoid nasty rumors that the dukedom is stingy and ungrateful. Having resolved the issue, he concludes that no matter the cost, he will buy forgiveness and peace for his family immediately. Breaking the heavy silence, the leader points to the fact that the hero healed his sick daughter's rotten leg. Full of gratitude, the wife adds that the big man's actions brought new life to their sad home. Bowing slightly, the Duke confesses with shame that his own family has no power to protect his daughters. Nodding morally, the protagonist thanks the person for the outburst, hoping at least to be given permission to leave. With a gentle smile, Karen's mother thanks him for his humble words and says it was an honor to meet him. Sighing with relief, the Duke finally prepares the bombshell proposal to rid himself of the terror. Raising 3 fingers, he lays his cards on the table, offering money galore, political support, and an entire mansion as payment. His eyes widening beneath the tin can, the boy freezes upon hearing the absurd amount of things offered. Begging for his life, the old man bows his head, pleading with his savior to accept the meager reward. Smiling inwardly, the Duke thinks he hit the nail on the head regarding the Verder mercenary's weak point. Mentally, he calculates that if the spy accepts the gifts, the family will create a very strong bond with the Empire's faction. Trembling with pure joy, the protagonist raises his voice, accepting the riches with open arms. Laughing with relief, the old man throws his shoulders down, satisfied to have defused the walking time bomb. Changing his tone, the Duke advises that if the warrior has time, he can visit the new mansion as a gift today. The wife is overjoyed and would love for her daughters to show the new owner around the village. Adjusting his suit, the father asks if the giant can meet with the heiresses outside to arrange the trip. Completely ecstatic, the boy agrees, following the girl's mother who gets up to guide the way. Leaving the office, the tension finally dissipates, leaving a clear environment for both parties in the negotiation. Hearing the click of the door, the Duke collapses into the armchair, drenched in sweat, feeling that he has escaped certain death. Looking at his trembling hand, he realizes the psychological terror he suffered just from staring at the black can. Running his hand through his hair, the father sighs, grateful that Karen had stumbled upon such a formidable monster. In the old man's mind, he's super relieved, thinking that the family has allied with the strongest being on the continent. Back in the present, the redhead Karen sighs heavily, noticing that the guy's armor is still intact. Crossing her arms, the short girl teases that he must be super dissatisfied with the tacky rewards. With a dry laugh, the boy pats his own tin head, explaining that it's the helmet that hides any joy. The older sister, in a friendly manner, points to the chairs, inviting the guest to sit down and relax to enjoy the rest of the day. Huffing, the little girl stamps her foot, questioning why he didn't try to act at least a little happier and more smiley. To put it bluntly, little Karen warns that it's impossible for anyone to accept a castle as a gift and not be overjoyed. Swallowing a nervous burp, the protagonist murmurs that inside he's setting off fireworks and doing backflips. Mentally, he confesses that he was so scared by all the money offered that his brain completely froze. Laughing to himself, the boy says that if it weren't for the bucket on his head, he'd already be dancing a waltz in the Duke's office. Cutting through his breeze, the older woman adopts a serious tone and asks if the great legend is happy with the prize. Frowning, she politely offers to speak to her father if he didn't think the payment for the elixir was fair. Lying through his teeth, he claims he didn't expect to be so spoiled by the rich. With a choked voice, Karen says that he saved her life and incidentally everyone's honor. Confused, the boy finds it strange that his entire family idolizes him as if he were a demigod. Breaking the breeze, the older sister also gives thanks for the charity in the dark forest. In a panic, the redhead stammers, saying she's still processing the information about the hero's new mansion. Showing her knowledge, the lady compares the garden of her new house to the central square and says that it is almost identical. Bugged, the protagonist repeats the word mansion to make sure he's not deaf. Sweating profusely, he thinks that nobles live in a world completely outside the reality of a poor guy. Ignoring the astonishment, the older woman casually asks if he intends to live there with some. Scratching the back of his neck, he admits that for now he has no long-term plans and that he will live alone. With wide eyes, the lady questions whether such a famous hunter never had time to find a girlfriend. Straightforward and direct, the redhead Karen points her finger at the black can and asks if he's never been into romance. Entering the pile, the oldest sighs, feigning pity, and says that lone heroes are the worst cases. Leaving the seat, the protagonist claims that his hectic life on the road has always hindered lasting relationships. Surprised, the little girl flashes a mischievous smile and looks at him, amused by his lack of skill. Confirming the story, the kid says he would even give them a copy of the key if they weren't so rich. Tired of the questions, he concludes that a giant house at least gives peace to the warrior's soul. Clapping her hands, the lady announces that she will make regular visits just to make sure he's alive. With no way out, the guy politely tells them to let him know before showing up at his door. The following morning, sunlight shines on the white facade of the protagonist's newest mansion. Inside the house, the chic furniture shines so brightly, it dazzles the eyes of even the most impressed commoner. Walking through the rooms, he notices that everything in the kitchen is made of fine wood and luxury stone. Arriving in the dining room, the enormous table has enough room for him to eat and still have a party. With a warm smile, the lady reaffirms that nothing was missing from that $1,000,000 gift. Shocked, the guy stammers and asks if all of that is really free of taxes and problems. Laughing, Karen finds the forced humility of the walking can cute. Sitting on the velvet sofa, she tells him to relax and feel like he owns the whole damn thing. Apologizing, the protagonist refuses the sofa, saying he just came in from outside and doesn't want to get the furniture dirty. P of life, the little puff, saying that if he wants she'll lie down on the rug just so he can sit there. Tired, the boy sighs heavily, swearing that he's not trying to play the saint, but that his legs hurt. Complaining like a child, the redhead tells him to stop treating himself like he's made of glass. Banging the gavel, she announces that she's cured and doesn't want anyone acting as a babysitter. Muttering softly, the protagonist admits that it doesn't look good for him to spread gossip about noblewomen sleeping on the floor. With a mocking laugh, little Karen says that he is very afraid of what others will think. Irritated, the boy lets loose, telling her to lie down wherever she wants, but that he prefers the cold floor anyway. Completely relaxed, he sits cross-legged on the rug, leaning his back against the girl's armchair. Sighing in frustration, she realizes he's too stubborn to argue and simply gives up on the fight. Closing his eyes, he relaxes his body, forgetting for a second that he's wearing 300 kilos of steel. Out of nowhere, Karen gets up from the sofa and slides to the floor, sitting right next to the big guy. His eyes widening beneath the visor, the kid freezes completely, asking what the hell she's doing. With a sly smile, the little girl says she felt envious and that the floor seems more comfortable. Out of the corner of his eye, the protagonist notices that the older lady has disappeared from the room, leaving the two of them alone. Teasing Karen, he jokes that she doesn't even know how to lie and that her back must be hurting by now. Turning her face away, the redhead tells him to be quiet, letting him know she's totally fine on the fluffy rug. In an irritated voice, she brings up the boring subject and asks why he doesn't take off his armor inside the house. By shifting his body weight, the hero gives the cliché excuse that he's ready for any danger. In his mind, the truth hurts, remembering that the woman in the carriage was none other than her sister. Frying with nerves, he thinks that if he takes off his helmet there, the mask will fall off and he'll turn into Hunter's mincemeat. Distracting him, the petite woman pulls away the brass arm without any ceremony whatsoever. Banging her open hand on the metal chest, the girl demands respect. Karen asks him to stop treating her like a helpless baby all the time. Sighing heavily, he murmurs softly, letting her know that he's only concerned about her comfort down there on the floor. Changing the subject, the boy says he is impressed by the trust his family has placed in him. Surprised by the doubt, the little girl argues that it makes no sense to doubt the city's greatest hero. With a frown, she points her finger, saying that noble families check everyone's background 3 times before. Laughing, he thanks her and gently pats her on the head like an old man petting a dog. Huffing with rage, the redhead slaps his hands, telling him to stop the humiliating charade. Calming things down, Karen explains that using the life-saving elixir was the ultimate sign of trust. Returning stealthily, the older woman cuts the scene and invites the 2 lovebirds to the official celebratory dinner. Sweating profusely, the protagonist refuses the offer with all the politeness that panic allows. Pulling at the corner of the cover, Karen demands that he participate since the house is now near the main mansion. Inside, he cries, remembering the psychological terror of facing the Duke at the meeting earlier. Trying to get out of this, he warns that fixing up the new village will take a long time and that he's dead tired. Looking at the cynical Can, the 2 sisters realize he's just making up stories to avoid going to the castle. The little girl stamped her foot and demanded that at least the hunter inform the family before disappearing from the city in the future. In his mind, the kid swears that if he could, he'd already be far away, fleeing from the 3 richest families on the continent. With a sweet smile, the older lady agrees and warns that she will put a guard at the door so he doesn't sneak away. Suddenly, the redhead throws pink smoke across the entire room, cutting through the dense conversation. Startled, the boy coughs a little and shakes his head, asking what on earth that was. Laughing, the older woman says it was just a silly spell to get the sweat smell out of his armor. Tattling on her sister, the little girl points to the lady, saying that the woman made a very strange gesture in the air. Curious, the boy tries to understand if it was some secret offense or noble magic. Furious, Karen squeezes his arm, begging him to remove the drugs from his helmet and show his face immediately. Yelling at her, the hero refuses again, saying that if he removes the can, he'll freeze to death right there. Pulling at the metal glove, the girl stubbornly insists, pulling and pushing without accepting no for an answer. Holding our little protagonist's arm, the little redhead throws in her sister's face that if she's jealous, she should just say so. Somewhat confused, the older lady puts her hand to her chin and replies calmly that the little girl doesn't seem jealous at all. At that moment, the deep voice from the helmet cuts through the tension, warning the noblewoman that she really shouldn't be making that kind of joke. Completely taken by surprise, Karen jumps back, her eyes widening at the big guy's curt reply. With a grim face, red with anger, she demands to know why the knight rejected her older sister but not her. In an attempt to explain himself, The boy insists that he is not treating anyone differently and that the lady must already have suitors because she is too old and beautiful. To confirm the boy's theory, the redhead elegantly crosses her hands, revealing that marriage proposals are raining down on her. But then she flashes a proud smile and drops the bombshell that she's still single and ready to mingle. Taken by surprise, the hero murmurs that he wasn't expecting that, while the brat continues clinging to him like a tick. At that very moment, the conversation turns to how the guys fall in love with the noblewoman, but run away out of embarrassment afterward. The protagonist, perhaps too sincere, admits that he understands the poor guys because it's tough trying to keep up appearances in front of such a beautiful woman. With a shrug, the redhead gossips that her sister is needy, but scares guys so much that they end up running the other way. Completely blushing, the lady tells the little girl to shut up out of sheer embarrassment, while the boy judges the brat for continuing to sit on his lap. Without further ado, the warrior pats Karen on the shoulder, telling her to test the softness of the sofa next to him. Indignant, the girl questions the order, and the protagonist merely sighs mentally, not knowing where this madness will end. As the girl leans her bottom against the upholstery, she realizes that the fancy piece of furniture is as soft as a real cloud. But as if she didn't want anything, she slips stealthily back toward the dark armor. Without the slightest shame, the brat sits back on the warrior's lap, pretending she didn't like the sofa. With a mischievous wink, she makes it clear that her intention was always to stick close to her savior. Completely lost, the boy stares at his own tin hand, unsure what to do, while the girl begs him to continue the conversation from there. With a huge grin, the older sister watches the scene, commenting that she's never seen the little one act so sweetly. Cut to outside the mansion, where a farewell atmosphere prevails, and the hero thanks everyone for their help during the eventful day. Full of politeness, the lady returns the thanks, saying that his time was the true gift. To get straight to the point, she informs him that the Duke's third prize, which is the family coat of arms, will take about 3 days to be ready. Soon the redhead will arrange to return in person to deliver the package and sort out the paperwork for the new house with the boy. With her head bowed, little Karen makes a very formal curtsy, showing all due respect to the big tin man. Full of joy, the little girl raises her hand and tells him to take good care of himself until their next meeting. The little cat returns the affection and tells the two to run home to reassure the rich old folks. True to her promise, the redhead pulls her sister aside and the two say their final goodbyes, leaving the luxurious mansion. With a dry click, the heavy door finally closes, leaving the room in total and absolute silence. Outside, the luxurious carriage speeds through the streets, carrying the noblewoman back to the Duke's castle. With a final wave, the warrior bids farewell, assuring everyone that the area is completely clear. Out of sight, our boy pulls off his helmet and finally reveals his face, breathing a sigh of relief at having that weight lifted from his shoulders. As the cart sways along the road, the feeling of a job well done hits everyone's mind. Relaxing on the bench, the lady comments that time flew by and she didn't even notice the hours passing. The conversation was so good. With her hands clenched, the redhead confesses, her cheeks burning, that she would have stayed at the mansion all night if it were up to her. In the midst of the joke, the sister agrees and immediately throws in her face that the little girl was very lucky to be called beautiful by the hero. With a mischievous look, the redhead presses the gossip button, remembering that the brute even used the little girl's first name. In an effort to disguise her outburst, Karen rambles on about how such a famous and powerful guy from Verder can be so easygoing and kind. Without missing a beat, the older sister bluntly accuses the little girl of clinging to the guy just to try and see his face without the mask. The brat, turning her back on him, defends herself by saying that her interest is pure, and just since he saved her life. In the redhead's mind, the image of the handsome tourist from the clock tower resurfaces, raising strong suspicions. Sadly, the little girl murmurs with her head down that her greatest dream of the day was to have seen the true face of the Black Knight. Feeling sorry for her sister, the lady promises that as soon as they get home she herself will make a composite sketch of the supposed hero. With an awkward smile, Karen thanks her for the intention, but reminds her sister that her drawings are too ugly to be of any use. Angry at the gratuitous insult, the older woman retorts, shouting that the brat draws much worse than she does. Back in the present, the lady's memory is triggered, recalling how she spotted the mysterious tourist at the top of the tower. In her memory, the young man turns his face away with a tired expression, revealing features that are beginning to make perfect sense. With wide eyes, the redhead finally connects the dots, feeling an absurd epiphany explode in her head. With a cry of excitement, she calls her little sister, instantly cutting through the somber atmosphere of the cap. Right on Karen's shoulders, the lady shakes the girl as if she's just discovered the greatest secret in the universe. Like a film playing in her head, Lifia recalls the boy's blank expression when he was interrogated in the square. With a victorious smile, she concludes that she has fallen into a brilliant trap set by the masked spy. Laughing, the older woman praises the man's audacity for making fun of her until the very last second. In total shock, Karen screams, asking if the brass knight was really the handsome guy from the clock. The older sister, with absolute certainty, banged the gavel, confirming that the two people are exactly the same person. With a mysterious look, the lady questions whether the encounter at the top of the tower was truly a coincidence of fate. She then replies that almost no one knew of her love for that view, proving that the Verder agent investigated everything beforehand. Putting the pieces together, the woman deduces that the hero planned every step to ensure that the girl's leg was indeed healed. Far from reality, Lifia blushes deeply, faithfully believing that the protagonist was thinking about her this whole time. With a sigh of love, the lady declares that the Dark Warrior is the kindest man who ever walked the earth. In a tragic scenario, she supposes that the poor fellow received a major scolding from the Empire's leaders for spending the $1 million elixir all by himself. Bringing the hero's words to light, the woman mentions that he doesn't regret anything and only wants to see the little girl enjoying her free life. Completely melted, Lifia analyzes how the boy carefully chose what to say to erase his sister's guilt, without demanding any payment. With her mind racing, she returns to thinking about the meeting in the bell tower, believing that everything was meticulously planned. Deluded by nobility, the woman swears that he was in the square acting as a secret guard in case some bandit tried to kidnap Karen again. Blushing like a bell pepper, the redhead concludes that the guy made absurd sacrifices silently in the shadows, without asking for a shred of recognition. The protagonist's humble smile, which never leaves her mind, hammers in the lady's head for even a second. With her hands on her chest, she fully acknowledges that the knight in black armor is simply a wonderful man. Unable to contain her anxiety, the older sister tells her sister that she will be counting down the seconds until the presentation of the coat of arms in 3 days. With a sideways glance, the redhead warns that Lifia has such a love-struck, silly look on her face that it's impossible to hide. But inside, the little girl is also brimming with emotion, realizing that the big guy cares about her on an absurd level. With clenched fists, the little girl resolves to break down all barriers to become even closer to the hero. In a strategic mood, Karen makes a face like she's about to put a foolproof plan into action very soon. Leaning against her little sister, the redhead wonders what her hot-tempered father's reaction would be if he found out she's smitten with the spy. With a flushed face, the little redhead thinks that for her father, the Dark Knight is someone totally unattainable. Sighing softly, the older lady tries to imagine what the old duke's exact reaction would be to this situation. With a start, little Karen lets out a very loud sneeze out of nowhere, breaking the silence. Cut to a scene straight to the cobblestone street where the pot-bellied innkeeper sweeps the sidewalk, looking rather downcast. With his mug in hand, the tavern owner grumbles sadly, knowing he will no longer see the boy's face there. To break the melancholy, the kid attacks a plate of eggs and bacon in the most peaceful way possible inside the bar. Right after swallowing, the hero announces that he won't sleep there anymore, but he'll definitely come back to fill his belly whenever he can. Satisfied, the old man asks if the food there pleased the warrior's discerning palate so much. Overjoyed, the uncle confesses that this compliment means a lot, and that he will always look forward to his visit at the table. Curious, the bar owner raises his hand and asks where the young man intends to stay the following night. After a sip of water, the protagonist bluntly states that he has found a house and will be living there for a good while. With a look of utter confusion, the innkeeper freezes and repeats the word house without quite believing it. Without making much of a fuss, the boy explains that he tried to refuse, but the duke himself forced the mansion down his throat. Shocked to the core, the old man's eyes widen and he lets out a shout, asking if the kid is messing with him. Completely tense, the boy agrees, saying that the noble family went all out against him just to thank him for the rescue. With his eyes closed, the innkeeper gives a little lesson explaining that receiving an entire village from a duke is a gigantic undertaking. In the hero's mind, the image of the luxurious mansion appears, but he tries to deflect by saying that things aren't quite like that. Firm in his argument, the crown warns that lands represent the ultimate symbol of that wealthy family's power in the kingdom. With a tap on the counter, the man deduces that the duke preferred to lose a piece of his own prestige, just to create a direct alliance with the warrior. Faced with this harsh truth, the protagonist remains in absolute silence, processing the political mess he has just gotten himself into. With half-closed eyes, the bar owner stares at the customer and asks very seriously who the hell he really is. Immediately, the kid swears he's just a normal guy, but the old man cuts him off immediately, saying there's no way that's true. To break the tense atmosphere, the hero throws a heavy bag of coins on the table, reminding everyone that he forgot to pay for his daily expenses. Somewhat startled by the metallic noise, the innkeeper points to the bag, asking what that lump of cash is. Calm and serene, the protagonist announces that it's cash as a reward for hiding him and giving him good advice during the hunt. In the midst of his refusal, the old man waves his hands, saying he doesn't want to accept money from such a dangerous individual. Using irony, the boy asks if the old man would accept the money if it came from a less shady guy. Without mincing words, the warrior confesses that he is stingy by nature, but this time he felt guilty for getting the old man into such a mess. In a heartfelt outburst, the bar owner agrees that hiding a madman from the Duke himself was utter madness. Amidst nervous laughter, the boy admits that he too had been sweating buckets of fear the whole time he was hiding in his room. With a sigh of relief, the hero says he can very well imagine the tension that was going on down there. Focused on the bag of gold, the warrior sincerely states that he was very happy to have chosen that inn to sleep in. In the back, some customers are laughing and gossiping that the bar owner always tries to act tough, but deep down he's a wimp. In a quick movement, the protagonist puts on his heavy helmet, preparing to return to the busy streets. With a very friendly smile, the innkeeper asks him to come back more often without worrying. In a farewell gesture, the Iron Knight promises that he will definitely visit the restaurant again. The doorbell rings and the big guy's departure leaves the tavern in its normal, everyday atmosphere. Alone at the counter, the old man picks up the bag of coins, feeling the absurd weight of the mysterious boy's gratitude. Upon opening the old leather bag, the light strikes the dozens of solid gold coins, blinding the man for a brief second. Completely perplexed, the man murmurs that the kid must be joking with that incalculable fortune. Weakened, the bar owner falls to his crouch on the floor, trying to understand how a miser could hand over so much wealth without batting an eye. The scene changes to a giant, luxurious cathedral, representing one of the three great absolute powers of the capital. Inside the brightly lit hall, the atmosphere is one of pure peace and untouchable sanctity. Then a girl with white hair pulls her own face away, warning her sister not to pinch her cheeks. Full of affection, older sister Marie holds little Nina's face, marveling at the beauty of the girl who has regained her sight. While adjusting her habit, the eldest officially introduces herself as Marie, Nina's big, protective sister. With a bead of sweat on her head, the platinum blonde asks for the 7th time why on earth her sister keeps repeating the same old story. In a serious tone, the nun questions whether the little girl is being rude and ill-mannered on purpose. Already seated in the church pew, Marie lets out a tired sigh and complains that Nina's language has been very vulgar lately. With a stern face, the older woman also scolds the girl, telling her to uncross her legs so as not to ruin the elegant posture of the Holy Family. Caught in a lie, the little girl adjusts her clothes and says she sees no problem if outsiders find her behavior acceptable. With a razor-sharp look, the older nun cuts off the excuse immediately, warning that the history of the clergy isn't quite like that. Surrounded by a false, divine aura, Marie boasts that she has the perfect ability to feign saintliness when the situation calls for it. Startled by the deceit, the platinum blonde tells her sister to stop looking at the world with that manipulative expression. Getting back to the point, the older woman explains that since her sight returned, Nina has been acting like a perfect little princess without a single flaw. In the middle of the council, Marie says that it's okay to let your guard down and be a little tomboy once in a while, just to breathe. Backed against the wall, the former blind woman completely disagrees, believing that the right thing to do is to maintain impeccable class at all times. In her sister's memory, the image of Nina smiling radiantly at the heavens proves that the girl has been making the most of every second of this new chance at life. With her eyes fixed on the youngest child, the nun confesses that in the last 2 days she had never seen the girl with such a radiant aura. In a stunning visual, the platinum blonde looks like a true angel blessed by the pure light of divinity. With her chin resting on her hand, Marie comments that this warrior in black must be incredibly badass to make such an impact. In the heat of the gossip, she mentions that the hero saved the little girl all by himself, and even used the supreme elixir completely free of charge without hesitation. In the minds of the two, the image emerges of the big guy flaunting 3 absurdly expensive magic bottles, without the slightest hesitation to spend. Delighted with the attitude, the older nun clasps her hands, and declares that both the man's strength and his heart are wonderful things. With a mischievous smile, Marie subtly suggests that a hero like that is definitely the ideal boyfriend for her little sister. Red with embarrassment, the platinum blonde looks away, murmuring that she just regained her sight and still doesn't have a specific type of man in mind. Ignoring the trick, Marie assumes that to distribute elixir for free, the person must belong to the upper echelons of the dreaded Verder. Full of ulterior motives, the eldest warns that such a rich and powerful party will attract hundreds of rival nobles wanting to marry. In the nudge, the nun advises Nina to go on the offensive and lasso the big guy early, taking advantage of her youth. Startled, the former blind woman sweats profusely and tries to escape the absurd marital pressure from her crazy sister. Suddenly, the door slams shut, and a third nun enters the room, calling the two by the elegant title of Ladies of the Church. To the point, the newcomer asks the sisters to stop the idle chatter and assume their sacred duties immediately. With a confident punch to the chest, Marie accepts the mission and summons Nina for the manual labor in the main hall. Still somewhat dazed by the talk of marriage, the platinum blonde stammers a yes and follows her older sister towards the exit. With her gaze focused, Nina murmurs her sister's name, ready to face the responsibilities of destiny head-on. The golden plaque in the hallway confirms that the famous Ansage sisters are completely devoted to church services. Deep down, the two nuns anxiously await the blessed day when they will finally come face to face with the big guy in black armor. Like a ghost haunting the girls' minds, the imposing image of the dark warrior won't leave either of their heads. 3 long days pass and the oldest nun collapses on the garden bench, dying of exhaustion after the grueling shifts. Sighing, the redhead Lifia appears unexpectedly, giving a sly little smile as she catches Marie slacking off in the backyard. With a startled jump, the nun hears the noblewoman's voice and immediately tries to defend herself, swearing up and down that she's just on her break. Adjusting her posture, Marie is puzzled by the unexpected visit, remembering that nothing was scheduled for today. Shrugging, the redhead apologizes for the intrusion and then sits on the stool to share the space with her old friend. Relaxing in the silence of the church garden, the heavy atmosphere gives way to a calm and peaceful afternoon. With the breeze brushing against her face, Lifia adjusts the skirt of her dress while the nun adjusts her habit, waiting for the conversation to get going. Looking around, Marie starts the main conversation, noticing the absence of little Karen, who is like a tick clinging to her older sister. With a wide smile, the redhead explains that the brat is gossiping nonstop with Nina, while they help sweep the porch outside. Reading the scene, the nun subtly asks if the unannounced visit means the Duke's family has already sorted out the hero's paperwork. In a tired tone, Marie blurts out that the former blind girl can't stand the anxiety of seeing the Dark Knight again any longer. Supporting the gossip, Lifia agrees, remembering that Karen is so obsessed with the big guy that she doesn't want to know about anything else in life. With a playful air, the redhead recounts that her little sister practically lives in the old tin can's lap these days. In shock, the older nun's eyes widen in disbelief at the little girl's audacity in front of a hardened veteran. Without losing her composure, Marie points out that the tin-faced guy has a bizarre magnetism that draws people close effortlessly. Resting her chin on her hand, Lifia sighs, completely in love, and describes the warrior as the most wonderful being to ever walk the earth. With a chill down her spine, the nun says that the statement is quite strong, and thinks that soon the two families will be fighting over the spy's attention. Changing the subject, Marie turns her face away curiously and asks if the Duke offered some gigantic reward to shut the hero up. Filled with curiosity, she tugs at the noblewoman's sleeve, begging to know the details of the payment just to have a reference of what the church should offer. Shaking hands, she explains that the clergy has not yet decided on the size of the prize and does not want to look bad in front of the nobility. Demanding secrecy, the redhead makes her friend Pinky promise that the gossip will not leak under any circumstances. Lowering her voice, Lifia brings her face closer and begins to list the awards in an almost imperceptible whisper. Right off the bat, she reveals the handover of an entire luxurious villa as a simple token of gratitude for her daughter's lives. Immediately afterwards, she adds the chest overflowing with gold that was also shoved down the silent warrior's throat. Finally, the bombshell drops with the revelation that the Duke handed over his own family's sacred coat of arms as the third reward. Confused by the quantity, Marie repeats the list, feeling that something is missing given the colossal value of 3 lost elixirs. Scratching her head, she tells it like it is, saying that the prizes are very generous, but she still thinks it's not enough compared to the market price of that healing juice. Huffing in frustration, the redhead slaps her leg and agrees that the reward seems small, but it was the limit they could push. Confused by the complaint, the nun raises an eyebrow, not understanding how the offered fortune could not have been enough. Straight to the point, Lifia complains that the old can is stubborn and refused all the gifts at first, trying to sneak away. Startled, Marie's eyes widen in disbelief that someone so humble and detached from money and power could exist in the world. With her eyes fixed on the floor, the lady shakes her head, recalling the tension of that meeting with the old Duke and the mute hero. Stomping her foot, the redhead repeats that she keeps telling everyone that the giant is an angel on earth, and nobody takes her seriously. With a nostalgic smile, she confesses that even her grumpy father lowered his ear, stating that he could never challenge the warrior's moral compass. In her memory, the Duke is still racking his brains to find a way to match the kindness of the Verdure member. Analyzing the situation, Sister Marie assesses that the individual is not only strong, but also absurdly immune to political manipulation. With a sad smile, Lifia comments that his silence and detachment completely broke down her father's defenses. Completely astonished, Marie concludes that making the Duke of Aldia sweat only proves that the knight is the biggest monster on the entire continent. Smiling together, the two friends reminisce about the weight of having their little sisters saved by a being of such colossal power. Without hiding her admiration, the redhead points out that the guy has such a sinister vibe that even noble leaders feel the weight of their own inferiority. With an analytical look, the nun provokes Lifia by asking if she really thinks that a guy like that works as Verdure's doormat. Turning her face away, the noble lady thinks of her father's strict orders not to wage war against the savior at all costs. Agreeing, Lifia points out that if he really is from Verdure, messing with the guy will become an absurd political problem for the entire kingdom. With her arms crossed, Marie agrees, reminding him that he already has enough power to not care about money and silly awards. However, the redhead cuts the conversation short, revealing that he only seemed minimally happy with the cash, completely ignoring the village and the coat of arms. Indignant at the other's stupidity, the nun shouts that the madman has lost his mind, because the Duke's coat of arms is worth 100 times more than a bag of gold. In Marie's theory, money is earned through work, but the Duke's symbolism is invaluable in high society. According to the laws of the kingdom, the coat of arms is the ultimate protection, guaranteeing that the wealthy family will kill and die for whoever holds that piece of paper. Putting the pieces together, the nun deduces that he, as an agent of Verdure, already has the emperor covering for him, which renders the Duke's defense futile. Cutting through the breeze, Lifia prefers to believe that he only likes money so he can donate it and buy things for the poor on the street. In her romantic illusion, the humble warrior focuses on small joys in order to continue using resources for the good of others. Giving Marie a crooked little smile, she already imagines the church itself sending mountains of money to the coffers of the crazy savior. Somewhat awkwardly, the noblewoman notes that the nun's theory is exactly the same as her own sister's idea, and accuses the nun of having a crush on the big guy. Laughing, Lifia teases Nina, calling her clever for already testing the waters to seize the bachelor's heart. Feigning indignation, Marie tells the redhead to wash her mouth out before accusing the clergy of cheap gossip. Patting the nun on the shoulder, the noblewoman suggests that she should be honest with him and just let go of her love-struck feelings once and for all. Cut to the scene of the youngest sisters sweeping the porch in perfect friendship, waiting for their older sisters to finish gossiping. While chatting as they clean, little Karen recounts the panic of finding her savior again amidst the crowd. With a broom in her hand, Nina listens attentively, lamenting that the poor fellow must be hiding, afraid of punishment for the elixir. Pointing her finger to the sky, the former blind girl swears that if it were her, she would have cursed everyone back without any mercy. Putting the mop aside, the little redhead laughs, remembering how he ignored her scolding and told the little girl to enjoy her healed leg and be free. With her hands clasped in a gesture of prayer, the platinum-haired girl cries with relief knowing that he did not suffer any severe retaliation from the guild. Excited, Karen adds that he was super calm and assured her that he didn't regret his decisions in the woods at all. Pondering the idea, the redhead suspects that the guy's strength is so overpowered that the organization is afraid to send the monster away. Leaning against the wall, Nina agrees, thinking that the big guy doesn't look like the type to bow down to an idiotic superior's order. Sitting on the bench, the two agree that his stubbornness in doing what he thinks is right is precisely the warrior's greatest charm. Curious, the nun asks if her friend has any idea how long the armored idol will be parading around the city. Without knowing much, the little girl told him he pretended to have work to refuse the fancy dinner at her father's castle. In a child's imagination, the girl believes that at night the brute leaps across the rooftops hunting bandits or conducting deadly patrols. Sighing, the two girls repeat in unison that he is simply the most badass knight in the whole world. Like a precious secret, Karen calls her friend aside with an exclusive piece of gossip she's been saving for the right moment. Spilling the information, the redhead recounts that the big, stingy guy always has lunch early at Eldie's humble tavern every single day. Upon hearing the name of the tavern, Eldie, Nina jumps in pure surprise. In the midst of her desperation, Karen yells at the nun, asking if she's planning on going there to spy. Red as a pepper, Marie stammers that she just wants to thank the big guy on the right for his help. Without wasting a second, the nun lifts her skirt and runs off like crazy, leaving the redhead behind. Indignant at the attitude, the little girl shouts, asking if the woman is really going to leave her there alone in the garden. At this point, our protagonist arrives walking peacefully down the cobblestone street, towards the old man's bar. With his hand on the doorknob, the boy is already mentally preparing for his routine lunch. Inside, the curious nun is already cornering the tavern owner, wanting to know the giant's schedule. Right at that moment, the boy freezes in the doorway, looking bewildered, not understanding what the heck is going on. With a trembling voice, the old man steps back and warns that he needs to maintain absolute secrecy about his clients' personal lives. Suddenly, the bar owner points to the sweating warrior and announces that the target of the gossip has just arrived. Completely lost, the boy comments that the innkeeper seems to be undergoing a police interrogation. Blinded by gossip, Marie ignores the newcomer and insists on knowing which table the old tin can usually occupies. With a nervous slap on the counter, the noblewoman demands the complete information once and for all. With his finger twitching in fear, the old man simply points straight at the black armor standing there beside him. Curious to the last hair on her head, the nun browses the menu to discover what the warrior usually devours. The old man promptly shows the meat dish from the previous day, and the nun immediately orders the exact same meal. The protagonist stood motionless, his face stunned by the sharp scream that escaped him in sheer panic. Mentally, the kid calculates whether he should turn around and disappear so as not to disturb the woman's outing. However, he soon decides that running away would be very rude to someone he himself saved in the forest. Stepping firmly into the hall, the boy is confident that the atmosphere will cool down with his presence. Out of the corner of his dark eye, he confirms that the poor old man is suffering terribly at the hands of his frantic wife. With his hands on his head, the bar owner quietly begs the car to wait just a minute. With a tired sigh, the hero decides to relax in the corner, offering moral support to the innkeeper. At that exact moment, little Nina slowly enters the room, looking a little lost and cute. Quick on the trigger, the big guy turns his face to the side, pretending to be blind so he doesn't get dragged into the fight. Stealthily, the black armor slides sideways across the counter, trying to disappear from the group's field of vision. Frying his neurons, he wonders why fate decided to bring these crazy guys together today of all days. Approaching the commotion, the former blind girl tugs at her older sister's clothes, telling her to stay quiet. In the midst of his escape, the boy hears the heavy sound of boots coming straight towards him. Desperate for his own life, the bar owner runs to the boy's side, demanding help to get rid of those crazy women. To appease the old man, the protagonist chuckles and promises to compensate for the stress by paying a hefty price for the food. Suddenly, the little platinum blonde appears right behind the warrior, stuttering as she tries to get the brute's attention. Turning the heavykin over, the hero lets out a groan of surprise as he comes face to face with the little girl. With a smile that could melt even stone, Nina crosses her hands, filled with gratitude and pure joy. Timidly, the noblewoman holds her own skirt, gathering courage to strike up a conversation with her idol. On the girl's chest, the family's shining jewel sways back and forth, reflecting the light of the... With flushed cheeks, Nina asks in a super sweet voice if the big guy still remembers her face. In an animated tone, the boy feigns surprise, saying the little girl's name and complimenting her super healthy appearance. Overcome with emotion, the platinum blonde thanks everyone and celebrates, relieved to see that the savior remains both whole and dangerous. Hidden behind the counter, the bar owner whispers, demanding the absolute secrecy that the metalworker requested the previous day. Feeling the weight of his mistake, the hero apologizes as his older sister and bodyguard approach. Waving his hands in the air, the old man tells the boy to forget the scolding and just relax his body. Shifting focus, the warrior confesses to Marie that it took him a while to recognize her wearing that religious uniform. Twirling slightly, the nun breaks into a huge smile, asking if the sacred habit suits her body well. Honest and direct, the protagonist reveals that the outfit will truly fit perfectly when she's a little older. Even with the inversion, the noblewoman appreciates the compliment, feeling her heart beat faster in her chest. With a silly smile, she admits that she never imagined running into the Verder legend again so early in her life. In the background, the armored bodyguard faces everything, super tense and ready to pick a fight. Suspicious of the hulking figure, the masked woman lets out a low murmur, gauging the absurd strength of the black warrior. Turning his attention back to the little girl, the boy asks if her vision is working perfectly again. Overflowing with joy, the formerly blind woman assures everyone that she can see everything while he raises his fingers to test the miracle. In a quick joke, he shows 2 fingers, then raises his middle finger and finishes with 5, while the girl gets everything right, laughing non-stop. Feeling safe, the boy removes his helmet, revealing his face, and celebrates the girl's definitive cure. With tears welling in her eyes, the platinum blonde says she can finally see her own family after years in darkness. Somewhat embarrassed by the harsh statement, the protagonist scratches the back of his neck, asking her not to say such sad things there in the tavern. With his head down, the boy tells her to enjoy her freedom to the fullest. Otherwise, the expense of the legendary elixir will have been for nothing. Saluting, the girl promises with all her might that she will live life to the fullest. Breaking the exciting mood, the innkeeper arrives beaming with sizzling dishes in his hands. Sitting at the table, little Nina's eyes widen in complete astonishment at the mountain of food in front of her. Pulling up a chair, the warrior asks, shocked, if the little woman really had the courage to order the family-sized portion. With his fork in hand, he warns that the dish is for adults, but the girl defends herself, justifying that she wanted to eat the same as him. Red with embarrassment, the platinum blonde confesses that the main reason for the visit was precisely to share a meal with the hero. Laughing heartily at the situation, the boy understands the girl's vibe and finds the noblewoman's innocent gluttony amusing. Right behind, the masked bodyguard announces in a gruff voice that she will help scrape the plate clean if there's any food left over. Smiling with immense relief, the former blind woman thanks the tough woman by her side for her support. Placing his helmet on the table, the little protagonist tells the gang to attack the food before it gets cold. Pointing to the plate, he warns that the old man's seasoning is too good to let go to waste with idle chatter. Joining their hands in a quick gesture, the nuns thank heaven for the day's lavish meal. In the corner, the woman in armor removes the lower part of her mask and immediately devours the first monstrous bite. Chewing with her eyes closed, little Nina breaks into a huge smile, praising the incredible taste of the dish. Smiling along, the boy agrees and celebrates the victory of having brought them to such a good food spot. From behind the counter, the owner bangs his mug hard and yells, asking why the kid is acting like the big boss of the city. Not understanding the gratuitous aggression, the boy is startled, and the old man confesses that he served in anger because the visitors had terrified him. Scratching his head, the hero sighs defeatedly, remembering that he had already taken the blame for all that mess with security. Giggles softly, Nina notices the big guy's close relationship with the bar owner and remarks that the two seem inseparable. With a forced smile, the protagonist stammers to the old man that they are good friends, aren't they? But mentally, the old man freaks out, swearing that if he had known the kid was from the Empire's elite, he would have stayed 10 kilometers away. In a verbal slip, the hero realizes too late that he used too much slang in front of the noblewomen, and begins to sweat profusely beneath his metal armor. Making conversation with the bodyguard, he sincerely asks her to ignore the blunder and not report anything to the bosses. The platinum blonde, in a super sweet voice, calmly announces that she prefers it when the knight speaks in a more informal way. Sweating nervously, the boy mentally begs the two girls to just forget everything they heard and not cause trouble. Whispering to his uncle, the protagonist confesses that finding the exaggerated formality of the nobles amusing is exactly the reaction of a normal person. The knight spears the food directly onto the plate, reminding the bar owner that he's the odd one out for bowing so much. Breaking the silence, Marie apologizes in advance for dropping the bombshell right in the middle of the lavish lunch. Tapping her fingers on the glass, the nun announces that her rest time outside the church is almost over. Bringing a piece of bread to her mouth, she enters business mode, wanting to know when the hero's schedule will be free. With flushed cheeks, the nun begs to set a specific day to officially thank him for everything he has done. Without giving Marie much room to maneuver, she repeats that the visit has to happen so that the debt of gratitude is at least mentioned. Completely panicked, the kid's spine tingles and he lets out a choked sound, not knowing how to escape this gigantic mess. He quickly moves away from the table and tries to make excuses, saying he'll think of a good date for the meeting. Refusing immediately, the nun raises her hand and assures that the clergy are more than willing to go to the hero's house without any problem. Breaking a cold sweat, the boy realizes that the church has also put its intelligence network to work hunting down his secret village in the city. In the protagonist's mind, doubt lingers as to how the nun managed to track down his address so quickly. Accepting defeat, he sighs heavily and agrees, but warns that the Verder agent's schedule is packed during the week. Knowing the danger of the man's job, Marie smiles and suggests scheduling the official visit for Sunday at noon. Banging the gavel, the big man accepts and immediately asks, out of curiosity, who exactly will be knocking on his door that day. Following the hierarchy, the nun begins by listing the names of the bigwigs and then includes the father, the mother, and even the dog if she can. To make matters worse, she ends with an angelic smile, announcing that she'll bring an entire battalion of bodyguards just in case. With eyes trembling in shock, The protagonist's neurons are frying as he tries to process the absurd strength of Nina's battalion. In a final effort, he subtly asks if he can choose who gets in and who gets left out of the visit. Confused by the commoner's audacity, the nun shakes her head, asking what he means by that nonsense. Without beating around the bush, the warrior confesses that he hates fancy, pretentious meetings with the wealthy members of high society. At the back of the bar, the tavern owner listens to the hero's little show and gives a mocking laugh, thinking the kid is acting like a real lunatic. Inside, the innkeeper judges the big guy, knowing full well that beneath the black tin there's nothing of a cold and calculating hero. Pressing the nail on the head, the hero lies blatantly, suggesting that the noble parents must be swamped with work at the church and can't waste time on a silly visit. To seal the coffin, he drops the bombshell, saying that the nuns can go alone but that he doesn't want to run into the big bosses because rich people are scary. Surprised by the refusal, the former blind girl innocently asks if the protagonist doesn't trust her enough to properly introduce him to his family. He immediately denies everything, blaming it on his own nervousness, while the bodyguard relents and agrees to pass the message on to her superiors. With a super deep sigh of relief, the warrior agrees, saying that this was always the proposal from the beginning. Breathing easier, the boy realizes that this time the negotiation didn't end in death threats or a monumental scolding. Finishing their meal in silence, the noblewomen take their last bites, cleaning their plates and concluding the best lunch of the day. A short time later, all the empty plates prove that the tavern owner is a real whiz in the kitchen. Satisfied, the nuns politely say goodbye, mentioning that their schedule at the church is bursting with commitments. Waving his iron hand, the knight wishes them good work and assures them that he will be waiting for them both at the weekend. Hearing the door close, the noblewomen's heavy boots disappear down the corridor, leaving the hall in a deathly peace once more. Letting out a breath all at once, the boy collapses into the chair and wipes away the fake sweat that drips from the heavy can. The innkeeper approaches, tidying the dishes, and nudges, asking who should really be tired after all that mess. Complaining, the old man kicks the boy in the shin and warns that answering the clergy unexpectedly drains anyone's energy in 3 seconds. Leaning against the wood, the hero agrees and throws in the towel, confessing that they both really messed up in the end. With a towel in his hand, the old man throws it into the mix, suggesting that the protagonist can't be just anyone if he gets into so much trouble with the church. Sweating under his helmet, the kid stares blankly into space, hoping the older man will believe his unwavering badass pose. With a cynical smile, the bar owner confesses that he realized he acted too casually, even though he knew the guest was dangerous. Agreeing and relaxing the tension, the hero admits that he much prefers straightforward talk to the exaggerated deference of those who are afraid of him. Raising his hand in a friendly gesture, the boy warns that he holds no position to give orders or order anyone's arrest in the city. Changing the subject, the bodyguard turns the conversation around, and the warrior asks if the woman scared the old man too. Shivering, the old man agrees that the masked woman was pure terror, and that the atmosphere became heavy just from looking into the girl's cold eyes. Desperate, the protagonist blames his friend and complains that if he had known the woman was such a devil, he would have left much sooner. Laughing at the cowardice of others, the innkeeper recalls the sweet words of the noblewomen, proving that the dark warrior came out on top in the end. Putting his head to work, the boy connects the dots and realizes that the tough woman didn't make a scene in front of little Nina so as not to spoil the peace. As if by magic, the protagonist understands that silently enduring falsehood for the sake of his boss is precisely the true function of an elite guard. Considering the weight of the task, the boy murmurs that he even feels a little sorry for those who have to live with this daily stress on their shoulders. The old man quickly cuts off the reflection, reminding everyone that a Verder agent should be the person who best understands brown-nosing in high society. Scratching the counter with the cloth, the innkeeper accuses the customer of making no sense at all, since his job must involve licking Emperor's boots all day long. Acting crazy, the kid gives a silly little laugh, revealing that he sent a super empty catchphrase just to seem smart to the old man. Huffing and puffing with exhaustion, the tavern owner replies bluntly that if the protagonist has absolutely no idea about politics, then he must be above the rules themselves. Pointing his dirty finger, the old man deduces that the knight must hold a more prestigious and untouchable position than any bishop in the church. Waving his hands in desperate refusal, the boy swears up and down that he doesn't even rule over himself, let alone a kingdom. Sighing with a headache, the hero realizes too late that each lame excuse only increases his monstrous reputation on the streets. Cut to the carriage rocking in the distance where the sisters finally relax in the leather seats, chatting amiably. With her arms crossed, the older woman cuts through the nostalgia, and asks for the complete evaluation report that the bodyguard made of the big black man. Clarifying the situation, Marie explains that she wasn't asking about the appearance of the armor, but rather about the level of strength and intentions behind the helmet. Lowering her head, the masked woman apologizes, stating that the target was watching her every move without blinking even once. Terrified by the gossip, Marie's spine tingles as she realizes that the two of them had been analyzed as threats throughout the entire lunch. Serious as a rock, the warrior confesses that deep down, noblewomen completely lose focus when they find their favorite food on their plate. Mentally whipping herself, the woman takes full responsibility for not being quick enough and not protecting her bosses from the kidnapping at the beginning of the story. The guard, with a heavy heart, declares that he is not fooled by the shadowy warrior's charm and will continue to watch over the city's shadows with blood in his eyes. In her romantic illusion, little Nina suggests that the savior only hid his presence as a joke, so as not to scare the people. Cold and calculating, the masked woman dismisses the trip, swearing that everything was meticulously planned in a dangerous mind game orchestrated by the spy. With a penetrating glance, the bodyguard declares that the knight is neither ally nor enemy yet, but has already proven to be a monster in sheep's clothing. Focused on the mission, the bodyguard concludes that the guy has monstrous perception and warns that she will tell everything to Nina's father. Confused by the conversation, the former blind woman innocently asks if the woman will only report the thanks. In the nun's mind, any normal person would seize the golden opportunity to become a partner of the rich without a second thought. Disagreeing with the little girl, Marie points out that the man used the excuse of not wanting to draw attention, just to be in control of the situation. With a blank expression, the platinum blonde murmurs sadly, realizing that his lack of time was pure nonsense. Pondering the idea, the older nun states that someone who is afraid of nobles doesn't act with that absurd tranquility in the bar. Recalling the warrior's fame, the woman deduces that a member of Verder is already more than accustomed to dirty politics. Faced with this weighty logic, an eerie silence falls over the nun's carriage. Breaking the ice, Marie drops the bombshell that the hero must be sensing some sinister trouble brewing right at the base of the sacred church. Bringing the brute's words back to the woman, she concludes that the refusal to see the leaders was not a mere whim of a pawn. Seized by panic, the nun orders the coachman to whip the horses so they can reach the castle and warn their father immediately. Startled, the little platinum blonde agrees to the hurried arrival, sensing the atmosphere growing increasingly heavy. Quick on the trigger, the cart driver snaps the reins, forcing the pace of the journey. Raising dust, the luxury vehicle tears through the streets of the capital in a frantic race. Finally, the luxurious destination appears on the horizon bathed in the afternoon sunlight. Back in the comfort of the mansion, Marie sighs with relief, remembering that at least the warrior had personally invited them both to the meeting. With a mischievous smile, the nun says that the old can tastes excellent to women. Trembling from head to toe, the former blind girl points out that her older sister's leg is shaking with nervousness. Red with shame, the nun tries to defend herself, justifying that the news of her parents' departure caught everyone by surprise. Ignoring the crazy conspiracy theories, the little girl smiles from ear to ear, believing that the big guy is a wellspring of kindness. In Marie's mind, the imposing brass figure emerges, causing her to doubt whether he is truly as generous as the little girl thinks. Full of purity, Nina compares the giant's heart to the kindness of her own big sister. Gaining confidence, the nun decides that on Sunday she will act naturally without forcing her sanctity. Confused by the bizarre excitement, the short woman questions whether the woman is planning some fatal madness. Regaining her composure, the older woman murmurs that being authentic is good, but the polite version guarantees better moral standing with the idol. Sweet as honey, the little girl confesses that she prefers 1,000 times the outspoken and genuine manner of the nun. Touched by the words, the woman accepts the advice, promising to bring sincerity to the encounter. Changing the subject, the nun returns to praising the spy's mysterious qualities. Pondering the guy's intelligence, the woman believes he's already figured out the schemes of a rival cult before everyone else. Startled by her own thoughts, she concludes that it's much safer to have no idea how Verder gets her gossip. Considering the danger, Marie warns that snooping into the madman's life could turn the entire empire into a mortal enemy. In a tragic scenario, she foresees the brute simply disappearing off the map and erasing the church from his life. Swallowing hard, the noblewoman reinforces that confronting that wall of steel is asking for a life of nothing. Laughing nervously, the nun jokes that the spy might be hanging from the ceiling listening to their conversation. Amused, the little girl dismisses the madness, remembering the battalion of guards protecting the mansion's door. Right at that moment, the sound of heavy footsteps echoes clearly from the roof of the room. Immediately, the blood of both women froze in their veins as panic took over the room. Forcing a forced smile, the formerly blind woman tries to convince herself that it was just a random bug strolling across the roof tile. Sweating profusely, Marie immediately changes her tone and begins praising the giant's kindness if he is indeed listening. Quickly agreeing, Nina praises the hero while the guards outside swear that security is impenetrable. Fast forward to the blessed Sunday of the reunion, and it finally arrives. Back at the bar, the innkeeper comments on the boy's audacity in going out to eat on the very day he was expecting the church elite at his house. In the Crown's Head, receiving the Ansage family is an event that brings the entire city to a standstill because of the political pressure. Relaxed, the protagonist mentally celebrates the brilliant plan of having thwarted the presence of the terrifying bosses. Without the mask, the boy takes a deep breath, assuring everyone that he has rehearsed all his lines so as not to embarrass himself in front of the nuns. Focused on the goal, the kid admits that the only real danger is arguing with the platinum blonde's hot-tempered sister. Without a shred of scruples, the warrior decides that if things get ugly, he'll use the little girl as a human shield of cuteness. Wearing the tin bucket on his head, he decrees that the cowardly strategy is simply infallible. Back to reality, the boy notices that the bar owner has a funeral face in the middle of his shift. Looking back at the history, the hero remembers that Karen's father hired a whole bunch of servants to take care of his new mansion. Suffering from loneliness, the little protagonist complains that the servants are terrified to come near and clean the floor next to the monster. Sadly, the crazy guy confesses that the giant house has become a desert of social interaction. Lamenting his fate, he deduces that the old man at the tavern stopped feeling sorry for him after the scolding from the bodyguard. Noticing the movement, the boy takes a good look around the inn. To his surprise, he notices that the bar is packed with people, and has even hired new waiters to handle the clientele. With a genuine smile, the old man points directly at the hero and thanks him for the sales boom. Explaining the financial miracle, the innkeeper recounts that the visit of the former blind woman became a golden advertisement among the people. Impressed, the warrior notes the absurd fame of the platinum blonde and acknowledges that her beauty greatly helps with marketing. Changing the record, the kid remembers a juicy piece of gossip he heard on the streets. While dropping the bomb, the protagonist asks if the old man knows about the strange cult that wants to destroy the little girl's church. Astonished, the bar owner checks the gossip and understands the magnitude of the problem that is about to explode in the capital. Confirming the rumors, the old man reports that clients are saying that the bishops are involved in evil rituals. Delving deeper into the controversy, he explains that the cult wants to brainwash its followers to end the power of the Ansage family. Without the can covering his face, the boy sighs sadly, thinking that being rich and famous attracts a whole lot of misfortune. The cunning innkeeper is playing coy, swearing that the Werther spy already knew everything long before the gossip reached the bar. Mocking the old man, he imitates the hero's voice, saying that he always tries to play dumb to avoid responsibility. His face hardening, the boy regains his composure and asserts that the clergy has more than enough strength to crush the rebellious sect. Somewhat suspicious, the tavern owner warns that this new group is growing at a bizarre and worrying rate. Reassuring the lads, the protagonist sweeps the dust under the rug, trusting in the nuns' military might. In a sudden outburst, the old man grabs the warrior's clothes, accusing the secret agent of having already resolved the war in the shadows. Faced with the insane accusation, the hero can only let out a sigh of pure mental exhaustion. Slapping the old man's hand, the boy denies the theory and thanks him for the free information. With a mischievous grin, he decides to get the truth straight from the source when the little girl visits the mansion. Agreeing, the innkeeper finds it fair since the rich would never pay attention to a mere street cook. When it's time to pay the bill, the old guy tries to extort a fortune for the gossip, but gets an immediate rejection from the stingy guy in the armor. Being the nice guy he always is, the old man announces that since he brought the rich girls, lunch that day is on the house. With eyes shining with happiness, the protagonist thanks the tavern owner for the gift, while the owner simply asks him not to disappear. Mentally, the kid celebrates getting the free food, thinking that at least he got something out of the mess. As he walks out the door, he utters a witty remark praising the old man's heart and wishing him success. Once outside, wearing his helmet, the hero pats his tin belly, satisfied that he filled his stomach without spending a penny. Walking down the street, he remembers the nun's question about the real need to wear the armor all the time. Justifying his own fear, the boy argues that the heavy can is the only salvation against any deadly unforeseen event in the big city. Cut directly to the mansion where the head maid of the duchy patiently awaits the arrival of visitors from the church. Remembering the instructions of her wealthy employer, the housekeeper straightens up, feeling a nasty shiver down her spine. Out of nowhere, the Blackkin appears in the middle of the hallway, questioning where the maid got the gossip from. Without losing her composure, the head of cleaning warns that the Duke's information is of the highest security level. Sweating beneath the metal, the warrior sighs in relief that he didn't remove his helmet in front of the sharp-witted woman. Taking the lid, the oldest nun straightens her voice, asking the housekeeper who will lead the tour of the house. With a professional smile, the maid suggests the living room, and the protagonist sees no problem with the choice. Without further ado, the head cleaner turns her back and asks the group to follow her straight to the main office. Sighing with envy, little Nina looks at the big guy, finding his calmness amidst all that chic tension incredible. Supporting the idea, Marie ceremoniously asks if the dozens of bodyguards of the clergy can also enter the room. Trying to escape the crowd of thugs, the protagonist quickly suggests that the soldiers remain stationed outside the door. With permission granted, the hero turns his back, announcing that the entire troop can stroll and gossip through the giant mansion as they please. Surprised by his relaxed attitude, the housekeeper stammers, questioning whether he is sure about unleashing an enemy army inside his own house. Leaning his head back, the boy slightly raises the visor, asking if there's any problem with the others stretching their legs. Confused, the woman blinks several times, thinking that the dark warrior's calm demeanor hides a much more dangerous plan. Breaking the tense atmosphere, he immediately starts by asking about the sweets, reminding everyone that Karen had a blast on the day of the family stamp ceremony. Completely lost in the change of subject, the maid stammers, not knowing what kind of stamp the big guy is talking about. Sweating profusely, the head cleaner tries to hide her lack of information, but her panicked expression gives everything away. Without malice, the boy reassures the woman, saying that if there's a problem with the sweets, the meeting can proceed peacefully. With his little finger raised, he simply asks the housekeeper to provide the sweets again, estimating a cost of about 50,000. Her eyes widening in shock, the poor woman nearly had a heart attack upon hearing the astronomical price for a handful of sugar. Continuing the horror show, the boy pulls out the Duke's $1 million ring, asking if that isn't reward enough to pay for the treat. Feeling unwell, the maid asks through gritted teeth if the Verder spy is demanding an even more absurd payment. Waving his hands in a swift refusal, the protagonist swears he hates expensive gifts, because in the end they only bring headaches and problems with the taxman. Startled, he asks the maid if the refusal made him look like he was being greedy or overly ungrateful. Relaxed, the housekeeper assures that his noble honor remained intact and that the wealthy boss understands Verder's rough manners. Taking advantage of the opening, the head cleaner asks the tin warrior if he doesn't have any other particular desires in the house. Thinking about good neighborliness, the boy confesses that he wanted to give something back to the clergy and not just be the guy who gets things. With a gentle smile, the maid cuts off the idea, saying that the Duke already pays everyone's salary, so there's no need to stress about it. Without giving in, the boy insists on politely asking what kind of things the governess enjoys most in life. Completely embarrassed, the woman turns her flushed face away and murmurs softly that she loves stuffing herself with sweets like a child. Taking note of the tip, the hero promises with conviction that next time he'll show up at her door with a truckload of treats for her. With the deal sealed, the kid goes to town on his agenda and says he's going to stick to his plan of hanging around the fancy meeting room. There in the corridor, the small scene is watched from a privileged position by the nun's bodyguard, who is hidden behind the pillar. Walking ahead, the country housekeeper should gossip about all that conversation back to the duchy's base later. In the woman's imagination, she describes the shadowy warrior as the world's most deceitful spy, forcing sympathy just to appear good. Cut to the luxurious office doors swinging open as the dark warrior enters with poise and pomp. Without further ado, the head maid formally welcomes the clergy and orders the nuns to enter the death chamber. In a leader-like pose, the nuns from the church enter the office, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. Once seated, the masked guard brings up the subject, reminding them of the rudeness of not having been greeted at the front door. Closing the door, the doorknob makes that dry click, making the atmosphere of the secret meeting even heavier and quieter. With a stern face, the vice-captain of the religious guard fires back the words, saying that she had hoped the woman would have been removed from her post a long time ago. Without losing her composure, the governess agrees, saying that her own head was on the line, but the Iron Knight thought it best to hold back. Suspicious of the answer, the woman from the church questions whether the life spared was pure affection and consideration from the monster. Using irony, the maid retorts that the hero has strength to spare, and never came close enough to assess whether she was competent or worthless. To the point, the masked guard warns that if her skills have never been tested, the giant should consider her completely useless for the job. Faced with the accusation, the housekeeper simply swallowed hard, sweating profusely at the cutting words of the representative of the Holy Church. With a tired sigh, the maid throws in the towel, agreeing that if they keep discussing skill there all day, they won't get anywhere. Gossiping about the target, the woman claims that the guy in black armor is a locked safe, not letting slip even a single detail about himself. In a heartfelt confession, the cleaning lady admits that living in the same house as the big guy is worse than walking through a minefield. Explaining the neurosis, she recalls when the boss wanted to fill the house with soldiers, and the warrior vetoed everything because he hated crowds at the door. Recalling the scene, it returns to the guy laughing and waving goodbye, telling the security guards to go to HR because he prefers silence. Having to face reality, the bodyguard agrees that inviting everyone to invade the house is pure proof of the colossal self-confidence of the metalworker. Laughing nervously, the housekeeper jokes that the mansion's security is guaranteed by the simple fact that it belongs to a merciless monster. Cautiously, the masked woman tells the maid to shut her mouth, so as not to cause an ulcer from so much gossip about grown-ups. With a quick bow, the cleaning lady assures that she understood the message and says she will stay out of the office. Without letting the woman escape, the bodyguard pulls the brake and wants to know the housekeeper's honest opinion about the crazy order they received. Trying to escape the gossip, the maid stammers that speculating about the legend's wishes is too dangerous. Venting her thoughts, the woman reveals that deep down she doesn't believe that "do what you want" was a real free pass. Placing her hands together, the head of the household whispers that things are not so simple, and the invitation seems like a subtle trap. With a fixed gaze, she lectures the guard, reminding them that their job is to protect the noblewoman, not to give her a tour of the mansion. Explaining her own theory, the maid swears that the metal sheet sent everyone for a walk just to test the guard's level of obedience and attention. To top it all off, the woman declares that the officers are being pressured to do their job properly and not act like children at recess. Agreeing with the nun, she agrees that if this is the case, then the hero does not trust the army of the Holy Family at all. Lowering her guard, the maid murmurs a soft yes, affirming that at the end of the day, the only one she can trust in there is himself. In the minds of the two, the image of the brass warrior recedes into a sea of darkness, proving his overwhelming and solitary strength. Remembering little Nina's pure smile and healing laughter, the housekeeper thinks he simply doesn't want anyone getting in the way. Full of politeness, the masked woman thanks the tense alert, while the maid promises to relay the order to the other security members. Confused by the strange atmosphere, the boy swears he only gave a normal suggestion for everyone to relax. On the other side, the nuns exchange glances, finding his behavior very bizarre. Sitting on the luxurious sofa, he's racking his brains trying to figure out where he went wrong in his speech. To break the silence, Marie raises her hand, asking permission to ask a quick question. Without understanding the talk of conduct and vision beyond reach, the boy tilts his head to the side. Direct and straightforward, the nun confirms whether his order was indeed to change the way they act. Irritated by the riddle, the big guy demands to know the rest of the gossip that little Nina has been spreading. At that very moment, the former blind woman jumps in fright, feeling the potato baking. Completely lost, the poor guy mentally begs for a translator to understand those crazy women. In an attempt to calm the situation, the older sister admits that there was a misunderstanding and that she didn't grasp his plan. With a deep sigh, the knight reiterates that the request to relax was literal and without any elaborate plan behind it. With a deadly look, Marie squeezes Nina's arm, threatening the youngest daughter's dignity if she continues with the lie. Sensing the funereal atmosphere, the protagonist panics, believing the meeting is doomed. To preserve the peace, he warns that relaxing his vigilance would offend the dignity of the noblewomen, so it is best to forget the matter. Laughing, the little platinum blonde celebrates that she won the bet, and that her sister fell for the prank. Silent as a door, the warrior merely observes the nun's little show without blinking. Completely bewildered, the older nun asks where the innocent little sister from seconds ago has gone. In a pose of pure confidence, the former blind girl looks like a completely different person, full of attitude. In a quick gesture, the little girl adjusts her hair and decides to stop the game before the situation gets worse. With a mocking smile, she asks the Black Knight not to call her attitude rude. In control of the situation, Marie cuts the nonsense and pulls the focus back to the official acknowledgements. With his hand raised, the kid asks for a moment, explaining that he has a much more urgent matter to resolve before dealing with the money. Taken by surprise, the little girl blinks curiously to find out what the urgency is. Without further ado, the hero lays out the gossip about the new sect that wants to destroy the Holy Church. Truly concerned, the big guy asks if things are under control in the clergy. Somewhat hesitantly, the nun questions whether he truly prefers discussing politics to receiving the fortune. Immediately, the protagonist assures that he'll be much happier solving this giant problem first. Confused, the boy doesn't understand why the nun's eyes are suddenly shining with gratitude. In Marie's mind, the guy is a strategic genius who predicted the enemy attack long before everyone else. Encouraged by the hero's supposed intelligence, the woman beats her chest, ready to unleash her entire defense plan. Full of moral authority, the nun assures that the church has enough power to crush any rebellious group. Through details of the strategy, she reveals that they used the family's absence as the perfect bait for their enemies. Beneath his armor, the boy despairs as he watches the casual conversation turn into a war meeting. Connecting the dots, the boy understands that the clergy leaked the information about the visit on purpose to attract heretics. Far away, the giant cathedral shines under the sun as the master plan unfolds. With a nod, the warrior agrees that if the villains believe the gossip, they will attack today. With a heavy expression, the petite platinum blonde listens to the tension in the air without saying a word. In a flash of genius, the kid deduces that his rich parents are still in church, serving as live bait. Relieved not to have to deal with the old folks, the protagonist bets that everything will be resolved safely there. Indeed, the elite knights of the church were so heavily armed that they awaited any suspicious movement. On the sofa, the sisters stare at the medal, awaiting the blessing of the great strategist. With a wise demeanor, the hero declares that those who screw up always pay the price in the end. Off the field, he asks the girls to thank their fathers for their hard work on the front lines. Overcome with emotion, the nun bows her head, thanking the metal monster for its unconditional support. Inside, the boy celebrates his success in escaping the meeting with the supreme leaders of the religion. Cut back to the church, where absolute silence reigns among the sacred aisles. Impatient, one of the servants questions the bosses about whether they are really going to just sit there making fools of themselves. Looking tired, the patriarch and matriarch admit their guilt for neglecting their normal daily duties. However, old Ansage insists that he has decided to blindly trust the warning of the Black Knight. In a dark corner, the captain of the guard grits his teeth, calling the whole operation a ridiculous farce. Furious, the soldier doubts that any mercenary could have such precise information about a surprise attack. Against all logic, the warrior in silver armor refuses to accept that the clergy trust a madman who appeared out of nowhere. Outside, peace continues to reign in the cathedral square with no sign of any disturbance. With a heavy stomp on the floor, the captain grumbles that standing around in the hall is a complete waste of time. Blinded by rage, he swears that all the gossip about the invasion is a blatant lie spread by the big black man. An entire hour drags on, and the soldier again urges his superiors to end the phantom mission. Another 30 minutes pass and the warrior impatiently kicks the bucket, demanding an end to this madness. 2 hours of pure torture come to an end, and the Ansage parents continue drinking tea in the calmest possible way. Overcome with rage, the captain of the guard loses his temper completely, ready to throw a fit. Right at that moment, the wooden door bursts open with a violent bang, and a messenger yells for an emergency report. Startled, the captain's eyes widened, his jaw dropping to the marble floor. Panting, the recruit warns that the rebel sect is marching straight for the entrance of the cathedral, which is covered in posters. In control of the situation, the patriarch adjusts his glasses, realizing that the bait worked perfectly. Without wasting any time, the old leader shouts tactical orders, commanding the units to close off the building's exits. In a cry of supreme authority, he summons all available soldiers to crush the rebellion at the main gate. Focused on justice, the leader plans to confront the heretics and expose every lie in front of the people. With his staff raised high, he declares that all present will witness the absolute power of the Ansage family. The tape rewinds to the mansion where the atmosphere is heavy, in front of a colossal pile of open treasures on the table. Desperate, the protagonist begs not to receive that incalculable fortune as a reward. With puppy dog faces, the nuns beg him to accept the money, otherwise the church will be greatly embarrassed. Cornered, the boy sighs heavily, complaining that this pressure only brings problems for him. With her body bent over, the petite platinum blonde plays dirty and begs on her knees for the hero to fetch the ball. In a panic, the Iron Knight fries his neurons, unable to escape the millionaire pressure. Observing the scene, Marie analyzes the monster's genuine despair, realizing that his humility borders on insanity. Amazed, the woman wonders how a man who risked his own life could reject a golden empire so easily. Shaking his head, the Iron Knight swears that receiving this mountain of gold for free is madness, and that he doesn't want it. Opening the treasure chest, he focuses only on the golden gleam and the chic little box with the seal, and announces that he's taking those too. Crossing his arms, he makes it clear that he doesn't want to take any more extra items, because he's terrified of owing his soul to the church. On the sofa, the sisters are speechless, bewildered by the bizarre honesty and courage to refuse $1 million prize. Breaking the ice, he coughs hard to change the subject, and asks if the rich Ansage still want to show up at his house after all this. Excited, the little girl swears that her parents' presence is irreversible, and her future is already decided. Surprised by the giant's suspicious behavior, Marie's eyes widen as she questions whether the old clergyman truly frightened him. Trying to bring order to the house, the kid raises 2 fingers, signaling that there are 2 basic rules to follow. In a firm voice, he assures that the mountain of gold and the family seal are already a thank you far beyond measure. In closing, he makes it clear that he no longer wants to owe anything to anyone, much less waste time in boring meetings with their parents. Trembling slightly, the nun tries to defend appearances, saying that the rich need to maintain a certain image for the public. Cutting to the chase, the protagonist announces that he doesn't care about social standing, and that the noble family should focus on the empire's true priorities. Not understanding the reversal, the nun murmurs, questioning what priorities the Tin Man is talking about. In the moral, the hero points out that the Ansage family has plenty of morals, and shouldn't waste their precious hours coming to have tea at a commoner's house. With open hands, he confesses that he is a farmhand and has no idea what the old men do, but it must certainly be something more important than him. Confused by the simple explanation, the girls exchange glances, trying to make sense of that crazy conversation. Uncomfortably, the boy confesses that receiving forced visits is a complete waste of time, and that their parents would help the city more if they stayed at work. Relaxing on the sofa, he reveals the real reason for accepting the money, leaving his sisters speechless. Pointing to the heavy chest, he says that the church will put all that gold to 1,000 times better use and will bring order to the streets. Then he completes the theory by pointing to the box with the coat of arms, saying that if the family gets stronger, his protection becomes an unbreakable shield. For the first time, the 2 sisters don't know what to answer, remaining silent and absorbing the guy's strategic vision. In a swift bow, the formerly blind woman vows with all her might that the clergy will transform that treasure into an overwhelming power in his favor. Startled, the little girl glances sideways at her older sister, unable to believe the nun's firmness. Huffing, Marie agrees, saying that the big guy's morals command respect and there's no way to disobey them. The woman, in high spirits, suggests that from now on the church and the Black Knight work together to bring order to the capital. Remembering the hero's smile, the redhead sighs, betting that the old tin can was happy to be able to pass the money on to those in need. With a huge grin, Karen tugs at Marie's sleeve, and swears that the warrior is exactly the nun's ideal type. Red as a tomato, the nun screams in surprise, her eyes wide and almost fainting at the sudden gossip. Stomping her foot, she grumbles that it's the spy's fault for being so cool and unintentionally seducing everyone. Back in the main scene, the hero coughs and announces that he has a little something to give them before they leave. Handing him a tiny trinket, he catches little Nina's attention, who is confused by the little gift. Holding the golden object, the girl smiles, realizing that the relic was none other than the key to the luxurious mansion. Confirming the theory, the warrior warns that the doors of the house are always open for the lads. In a very friendly way, he leaves the message that they can show up there alone or in groups to hang out whenever they want. Complicating the story, he says that the Duke's redhead also has a copy and that the place has now become the official meeting point. Hearing the gossip, Marie's spine tingles and she raises an eyebrow, shocked by the noblewoman's audacity. With flushed cheeks, the little platinum blonde throws herself into a giant hug to thank the legend for his trust. In the nun's quick mind, neurons are frying thinking about how the empty space in the house is perfect for secret meetings. Immediately, she connects Lifia to the mess, imagining that the redhead kept her copy secretly to try and sneak in there. Quick on the trigger, the protagonist calls Marie's name, pulling her back to the real world. Slightly dazed from the fright, the nun jumps up, stammering a yes to the big guy. With a sweaty face and a genuine smile, he finally snatches the can, asking the nun never to freeze in fear around him again. Completely surrendered, the woman thanks him softly, covering her face with her hands and feeling an imaginary arrow of love strike her heart squarely. In the peace of the hallway, little Nina celebrates the scene while her sister tells the brat to shut her mouth. Outside, the housekeeper is already thanking them for their visit, guiding the nuns back to their base and ending the day. Gliding over the cobblestones of the street, the luxurious church carriage finally turns the corner and disappears from sight. In the dark hallway, the housekeeper leans against the wall, letting out a heavy sigh, feeling as if she had stepped into a minefield. Recalling the panic, she comments that the pressure of dealing with Werder leaves even her boss on the verge of absolute despair. Like a ghost from the past, the memory of the old Duke of Aldia sweating profusely with fear pops into the cleaning woman's head. Her legs trembling, the head of the household whispers to herself that any misstep with that guest would cost her her head. Knocking 3 times on the door, the maid slowly enters the office, already asking permission from the Almighty. Getting straight to the point, she reports the lady's departure, and the Iron Knight thanks her for her support as if they were childhood friends. Raising an eyebrow, the housekeeper notices the exhausted metal, and finds it strange that someone so strong could be so weak. To be honest, the kid admits that talking to the clergy drains his vital energy and justifies why he remains stuck in the metal chair. Pondering the words, the maid sighs, thinking she must be too stupid to understand the political maneuvers hidden in the hero's ready-made phrases. Without any malice, the warrior backs out and says he left the key with the girls, but asks the maid to handle security at the entrance. In the boy's imagination, little Nina locked and unlocked the front door about 10 times. She was so excited. Smiling foolishly, the protagonist says that seeing the little girl jumping for joy makes his day much cooler. Cutting through the breeze, the housekeeper spreads gossip, revealing that her religious sister is simply smitten by the knight's charm. With his guard down, the boy just chuckles, thanking them for the gossip as if it were just a cheap bar pickup line. Thoughtfully, the housekeeper murmurs that the nun's reaction was genuine, and that the nun was experiencing a surge of passion she had never shown before. Looking at the chest, she supposes that perhaps the fact that the hero demanded little for $1 billion ransom melted the noblewoman's cold heart. Raising his hands in a gesture of denial, the warrior rejects everything, saying that the woman is too classy to be impressed by commoners' money. Suspicious of the maid's sharp gaze, he asks if there is some serious suspicion in the air. Taking a step back, the woman claims that the pressure is because the guy from Verder manipulates people better than her own rich boss. Confused by the level of deceit in the empire, he wonders where the world went wrong for the nobles to act with such fear. Running his hand through his hair, the protagonist dreams of having 10% of the unwavering morality that the housekeeper thinks he has. Unintentionally, his relaxed attitude is judged as the ultimate proof that the giant is hiding unforgivable secrets. In the woman's theory, the spy charmed the little girls with sweetness and friendliness to break down any psychological defenses. With the image of the Duke collapsing, the governess recalls how the brute used sharp words and indirect threats against the redhead's father. Boiling with fear, the head maid clasps her hands and implores the heavens that the dark hero never direct his fury towards that mansion. Staring at the box with the golden coat of arms, the woman declares that she urgently needs to learn the macabre rules surrounding her new home. Sweating profusely, the poor woman nearly fainted from the terrifying energy emanating from the master's room. Cut to the scene of the happy girls shaking the cart, where the oldest nun shouts to the winds celebrating the reunion. Pulling her ear, the little girl begs for silence, warning that if the nun continues shouting about love, the entire streets of the capital will hear her secret. Smiling awkwardly, the nun tries to ease the despair by assuring everyone that the fright won't kill anyone. However, the platinum blonde points out that the woman was sweating profusely and trembling like a leaf near the armor. With her head held high, Marie retorts that the brat spent the entire visit playing peacefully with the key. In a clash of glances, the two sisters stare at each other, their faces sparkling with stubbornness. Breaking the tension, the nun extends her hand and tells the little girl to return the key for everyone's safety. Clutching the object, the girl shouts a loud no, refusing to let go of the treasure. Stomping her foot, the older woman scolds, saying that it's not time for children's games. With a long sigh, Marie warns that if the brat loses the key, it will be 100% her fault. Direct and to the point, the nun points out that the girl seems trustworthy, but is usually incredibly forgetful. Completely speechless, the little girl shrinks back, pouting as if crying because of the truth being rubbed in her face. To be honest, Marie swears that losing the trust of that armored monster would be an unparalleled nightmare. With a distant look, the nun recalls the tension of the meeting and confesses that the man is terrifying and calculating. Bringing the gossip back up, the woman cites her own father, who had already mentioned that the knight reads minds. On the defensive, the nun confesses that if it weren't for her father's strict order, she would have fled the meeting halfway through. Curious, Nina asks if the hero gave the nun any reason to act like a scared kitten. Swallowing her fear, Marie assures that she didn't face a direct threat, but felt the overwhelming pressure in the air. Changing the subject, the nun questions whether the gossip about the rebel sect was truly a masterstroke by the giant. Putting the pieces together, she theorizes that the hero of Verder was the anonymous person who denounced the heretics to the church. Reinforcing the paranoia, the woman accuses the black, closed armor of being a strategy to prevent anyone from revealing the identity of the informant. Nodding slowly, the little platinum blonde girl explains that their wealthy father thinks exactly the same way. With wide eyes, Marie repeats the word father, feeling that she doesn't know even a third of the plan. Frying her neurons, the nun deduces that to know so much about the cult, the monster would have needed to infiltrate the sect itself. Startled, the former blind girl swallows hard, realizing the suicidal audacity of the espionage plan. With her head spinning, the nun swore that such a dangerous agent wouldn't waste his time helping the church for free. Focused on the chest of gold, she agrees with her sister that the refusal of the money was part of the big guy's mystery. With certainty etched in her mind, Marie warns that the Dark Warrior is not the type to accept crumbs from the rich. Shrugging, the little girl sighs in admiration and says that the crazy guy is simply too stylish to be true. Deep in their imaginations, the image of the metal sheeting gleaming like a guardian angel wouldn't leave their heads. Somewhat incredulous, the nun questions her sister, wanting to know how on earth she was saved by such a chaotic and mysterious guy. With a serene smile, Nina replies that she also doesn't understand how she was so lucky to have run into him in the forest. Gliding swiftly along the sidewalk, the carriage sways terribly, but the journey continues steadily. In the distance, the great cathedral already appears illuminated, with the entire troop in battle mode, prepared for the worst. Arriving at the base, the girls' eyes widened as they saw the entire battalion positioned with spears in hand. Sweating profusely, the former blind girl gripped the hem of her dress, feeling the adrenaline rise in her throat. Cuddling her sister, Marie assures her that everything will be all right and tells the little one to relax. At the front gate, the captain informs his superiors that the noblewomen have returned to the castle without a scratch. Leaving the cabin, the little girl jumps into her rich father's arms, crying with relief at being home again. Without losing focus, Marie tugs at the hem of the patriarch's dress and demands the report on the enemy invasion. With a calm smile, the leader announces that the night's gossip was absolutely correct, and they crushed the rebellion. Jumping for joy, the girls celebrate that the dark hero was right all along. Entering the empty hall, Marie angrily asks why they rejected the fancy prizes the boy tried to return. Striking his staff on the ground, the leader of the clergy recounts that the big man sent the reward back like a slap in the face. Understanding the revolt, he explains that the Verder agent probably figured out the political maneuver and decided to play hardball with the church. Outraged, the patriarch complains that the hero denied the coins because he thought it was too little or because he was aware of some flaw in the plan's security. Marie immediately cuts the conversation short, yelling that the giant didn't mean to offend the family at all. With a wave of her hand, the woman warns that if it were a cheap excuse, she would see through the lie immediately. In shock, she recounts how the warrior conducted the entire negotiation with words on the tip of his tongue, leaving her speechless. Shocked, the patriarch crosses his arms, realizing that the legend of the armor is far more sinister than the rumors suggested. Accepting defeat, the old man confesses that he trusts Marie's intuition and will forget his suspicions. Sighing heavily, the nun points out that she hadn't expected the monster to refuse dozens of pounds of pure gold. Following the reasoning, the head of the clergy asks if the woman still wants to push the issue and try to force more gifts down the boy's throat. With a tense smile, she agrees and warns that trying to convince him is the only plan left up her sleeve. Recalling the warrior's curt words, the leader mentions the threat where the man swears up and down that he doesn't want the old people in his house. In the patriarch's mind, the hero's aggressive refusals pop up like machine guns, proving his absolute disinterest in visits. Desperate, Marie grabs her father's arm and swears to the gods that he spoke with those exact harsh words. Justifying her insistence, she points out that trying to show gratitude is the basic rule of the clergy, but that normal rules don't work with him. Suddenly, the patriarch recalls when the man said that the gold should be spent to strengthen the city itself, and not to fill the pockets of mercenaries. Smiling subtly, the old man understands the move, and concludes that the Ansage family coat of arms is now the greatest guarantee of peace for the capital. Celebrating the diplomatic victory, the leader of the clergy warns that, in essence, the protagonist has just become a powerful partner of the church. Completely bewildered by the twist, the nuns stare at each other, not understanding how a brutal rejection turned into a blood alliance. With a headache, Marie confesses that she only repeated like a parrot the exact words of the madman in black armor. Clenching her fist, the older nun reflects that his real intention was to make the clergy work harder to prove their sincerity. With a broad smile, the father claps his hands, admitting that he felt the same authoritarian pressure as the guy. Resigned to the billionaire's rejection, the leader agrees that there's no need to force gold down anyone's throat, and that the friendship is already guaranteed. Not to be outdone, the little platinum blonde shouts in the background, reminding everyone that the hero ordered the two old folks to work hard. Taken by shock, the parents jump and widen their eyes upon hearing the boy's abusive message. The silence of shame engulfs the main hall as church leaders absorb the humiliation inflicted by a henchman. In their imagination, The brilliant figure of the somber warrior giving a thumbs up deeply irritates the complacent nobility. Sweating profusely, the patriarch and matriarch giggle in despair, agreeing that the monster is truly terrifying. In his morals, the head of the family admits that provoking the fury of that brute from Verdure is tantamount to signing his own death warrant. Crossing her arms, Marie agrees, recalling the deadly reputation of the hunter faction. Shifting gears, the nun turns her back and asks in a sharp tone if they manage to catch the leader of the heretic sect. With a cold smile, the father explains that he used the interrogations of the captured henchmen to map all the hideouts of the rebel leader. Indignant at the calm, Marie's eyes widen, demanding to know why the soldiers haven't arrested the guy yet. Raising his hand, the patriarch justifies that attacking the enemy base now is a gigantic risk, because the villain might try to drag the church down with him.